Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, um, I did a video of Trump yesterday on his effed up position on Gaza and the whole thing with Hamas and all that stuff. And last night there was a tweet that came up that this guy from Jordan is endorsing Trump's plan, which we'll get into a moment here. The thing about all these things that Trump's doing, and we're going to get into Elon Musk appearing in the Oval Office, which was kind of weird, is you know it's whether you trust somebody or not, right? Because when you hire somebody for a job, you're putting some trust in them, and an administration or in this case the president or whatever it is, the whole thing. When you hire people to do a job, a job when people vote for a president, for the most part, they just want to vote for somebody and then we'll go back to, feel like they have somebody better than they had before, like in the case of Joe Biden, all the Trumpers, and they can relax, right? Okay, he's going to take care of it. We can trust this guy, right? And you can't trust Trump at all. Like if you watch The Apprentice and you know anything about Trump's history, the people closest to him, including his wives and friends and any business associates and whatever he's had, he's been totally willing to stab in the back, throw under the bus, and he turns on him. He turns on everybody. There's people who, were close with Trump, and he didn't do. They didn't do anything to him, and Trump needed them to fall on the sword for him. Michael Cohen, his fixer, Steve Bannon, these other people, and then people from his past, and whoever it might be, right? His wives and all these people, and Trump, threw him to the wind, right? He just chucked him to the wind because he's that kind of guy. And so if he's going to do that to his closest people, and he's not going to pay people, he didn't pay vendors, people who were providing things for him. He had bad relationships with people, in terms of hardworking people and all this stuff, and all the things he's done, all the things he's willing to lie about. I mean, before he became a politician, just as a businessman, he was lying all the time, right? And so we know he lied about Operation Warp Speed, or he exaggerated that thing. We know he got worked on COVID. We know that all these other things he's lied about, the fake attempt on his life. I mean, that thing hasn't really even come up now, right? Like it's not even a thing. Like he's gutting every agency but the Secret Service, and the Secret Service botched. I mean, if you believe the official story, they botched that assassination attempt, and now all of a sudden they're competent and good. He has no worries, right? I mean, he didn't say anything about them when it happened. Like he's big on fixing governmental waste and governmental inefficiency, and he's not going after the Secret Service at all. I mean, think about that. After the whole thing that happened, and so the way that Trump's behaved his whole life in public, he's not a trustworthy person. Like you can't trust the guy. It's just clear. Like anybody should know that, right? And nobody is. Like none of these people are. None of these people running for president. None of them are going to deliver on what they promise, because that's not what they do. That's not who they are, right? They promise things that they can't do to desperate people who want to hear what they have. They just want to forget about it. They don't want to read the ingredients. They want to have to deal with it. They just want to vote for somebody and then go back to their lives, right? And so it'd be great if Trump was great. It'd be great if America was successful, and whatever short-term success he's going to have, I'll be happy with it. Like I don't care, but it's not going to end well. Like no matter what happens, it might even last a year or two. I mean, hopefully, the longer it lasts, but sometime it's going to all blow up in his face, because it always does. That's why he's had to go bankrupt 6 times. That's why he's had 3 divorces. The guy, everything blows up in Trump's face eventually, because he's that kind of person. He's taken dramatic action. And the other thing is, everything's so fragile. Like America, this idea that America is strong. Like every year they give the State of the Union, and it says, that we're strong, America's strong. And we're not strong, because we have a debt-based economy, which is demonic in nature, and all the other aspects of our system that are, we're fragile. We're in debt. We're in over $36 trillion of debt or whatever it is, right? I mean, just in terms of the government, not we're over $100 trillion in debt collectively as Americans. Our GDP is $20 trillion, so we can never catch up on that, right? I mean, we're out of whack financially. If you were individual person with this number, you would be completely effed. And so you can't. It's not it's not sustainable. I mean, in terms of the country itself, like besides what Trump is, right? It's just the country's upside down, backwards in terms of the finances and all the other parts of it. America is fragile, and so it's a very delicate balance of corruption and government, whatever it is, like these governmental agencies and all these things that you don't want to mess with any one of these things when you're dealing with an economy and a country that should have collapsed years ago. The moral collapse. People are basically worthless now, Americans, in terms of our ability to deal with things and sustain anything that's other than our lifestyle that we've become accustomed to. And so it's a fragile balance. And he's just going and taking a sledgehammer to that fragile balance because that's what he does. And, Elon Musk's a part of that. And it's, in a way, it would be funny, but, we know how it's going to end. Like, it is funny, but it's going to end badly. So let's start here with these two guys.
Much for having us, and so short after your inauguration, I think just as a testament to what you said is a special relationship between our two countries and the personal relationship of friendship and trust between the two of us. Mr. President, I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region. And it is, I think, our collective responsibility in the Middle East to continue to work with you, to support you, to achieve those lofty goals. So I'm very delighted to be here. And as you said, sir, we've got some very interesting discussions ahead of us.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, many people in the region, especially Jordan, are worried about the annexation of the West Bank. Will you give His Majesty the King guarantee that you won't allow Israel to annex the West Bank? And how are you going to
I think that's going to work out very well. That's not really what we're talking about today. I think that's something that's going to work out automatically. And
Okay, so we know what's going to happen there. And I said this, when this thing started happening in October, this was Israel's one chance to get all of Palestine. And Trump winning the presidency gave them this window where he was going to greenlight. You could tell by what he was saying, he was going to greenlight anything Israel wanted. And so, he was saying this on the campaign trail. And so we knew this was coming. We didn't know it was going to be this bad. Like, it was even more over the top. And this guy from Jordan, it seems to have gotten a deal from Trump here.
and it's in good shape. And we discuss it, and other people have discussed it with us and with me. That's going to work out. West Bank is going to work out very well.
Mr. President, why should the king take in the Palestinian people? He's made clear he doesn't want to.
Well, I don't know, but he may have just something to say because we discussed just briefly. I think maybe you want to say it now, or?
Well, Mr. President, I think
we Look at this blinking M&F-er here.
Have to keep in mind that there is a plan from Egypt and the Arab countries. We're being invited by Mohammed bin Salman to discussions in Riyadh. I think the point is how do we make this work in a way that is good for everybody?
Right.
Obviously, we have to look at the best interests of the United States, of the people in the region, especially to my people of Jordan. And we're going to have some interesting discussions today. I think one of the things that we can do right away is take 2,000 children that are either cancer children or in a very ill state to Jordan as quickly as possible.
They have 2,000 cancer children there? Like, how do they have 2,000 cancer children out of 1.7 million? That seems like a very high. They're going to take cancer children? Like, that's, well, of course you can take the cancer children. They're not going to make it. Like, what about their parents? You're just going to take there's cancer. We got some cancer children in there.
And then wait for, I think, the Egyptians to present their plan on how we can work with the president to work on the Gaza challenges.
So you
I want to tell you, excuse me, wait, just please. I didn't know that, what you just said, 2,000 children with cancer or other problems. And that's really a beautiful gesture. That's really good, and we appreciate
Holy shit. Well, we've established the cancer children. What the fuck? Holy shit. These kids are living in rubble and they got cancer. Like, there's no hospitals there. I mean, what's happening? Like you said, it's been destroyed. What are these cancer kids doing, right? And how did 2,000 kids have cancer? Like, how messed up is that? Like I said, when I was a little kid, Anne Marie Lopez, because I always remember her name because of this, died of leukemia when I was in second grade, third grade. And I was like, whatever was going on in my small 8-year-old brain, whatever, 7, 8-year-old brain, I was like, holy fuck, kid just died. A kid in my class just died of cancer. And I knew that was fucked up. Like, I'm like, leukemia? Like, I was like, shook by it, right? Like, you didn't think about kids dying from diseases. And, you have cancer, kids getting cancer, like when they're young. It usually takes a long time for carcinogens to kick in. Is this turbo cancer? What is this?
Appreciate it. And we'll be working on the rest with Egypt. I think you're going to see some great progress. I think with Jordan, you're going to see some great progress.
See, Trump is going to make a deal here. Whatever, it seems like he's going to make a deal. And the only people that are going to suffer is the Palestinian people. Okay, so Trump is going to make a deal here. And we don't know what that is. Like, there's lands in that region that they can divide up. Like, this is where rich people come together and divide up a land. This is 1.7 million people live there. This is their home. And they're going to be shipped out to various places or killed or whatever. I mean, they're going to be, moved around. And nobody wants them. Nobody wants refugees. So what are you going to get? You have this like in the NBA or the NFL, more than the NBA, where a team has a player with a bad contract, right? And so, like, they're making a lot of money and they're underperforming, and nobody wants the contract. Nobody wants to trade for them. Nobody wants the player. They're being overpaid, and there'll be some losing team, and they'll get what's called a sweetener with it, right? Which will be like a draft pick or something, like, to take this contract. They'll get the other team have to give up some assets to dump this problem. And so you have the problem now, this Palestinian people, but you have this wonderful land in Gaza. And if they can all get chunks of it, or whatever he's going to give them, maybe he's going to give them some of the West Bank or whatever considerations, right? Weapons, like, any number of things. I mean, it's going to be, your stuff probably, but they're going to get some kind of deal. Like, they don't want the people. They've already stated they don't want them. And so whatever they work out here, Israel's going to get what it wants. We know that. Like, that's happening. I don't know what they're willing to give up or what they're willing to, what's going to happen here with all of that stuff, right? And, they feel like, all right, we can make this deal. And, I mean, the people of Jordan aren't going to be happy, the Muslim people, to see the Palestinians refugeed. Like, that region, I talk about this show, The Spy, I saw. Like, it's a fucked up region, and this relationship between the Jews and the Muslims. I mean, it's 300,000 years of beef, and it's like long and twisted and all these things. But I mean, Israel's going to end up with the Gaza Strip, and even if they get rid of all the Palestinians and whatever the Gaza Strip becomes, if they say America owns it, like, you can't just own the Gaza Strip. It belongs to the Palestinian people. But it's not really Trump has found a loophole. Like, this is kind of business deal that he would find, right? Where they don't have a country yet, so they don't have it's not the state, it's not two-state solution, and they can't once it became a state, they can't do any of this stuff, right? And so Israel's waiting for somebody to kind of realize that in America, that if we make it into a state, well, we can't go do this stuff we want to do to it. We can't, take it over and the stuff that they, it's not a country. That's why they've prevented it from being a country, with UN rights and things, and they can go to the UN. And, the UN, I mean, they should be totally against this plan. But who knows what Trump's been negotiating with all these things, right? And so what they're doing is getting rid of these people on this valuable land and rebuilding it. And then that's going to become whatever it becomes, right? Of the French River area of the Middle East or whatever. And so, like, it's completely fucked. It's just messed up, right? Like, one of the things in the show, The Spy, there's this place called Lake Tiberias. Spoiler alert. I don't know if people, it's not, I certainly don't recommend the show, but I found it kind of interesting, as just to cover here. This show I was watching with Sacha Baron Cohen is playing a serious role, and it's kind of weird. I'll talk about it in a bit, but I just want to say this one part about it. There's a plan where they were going to try to drain, Syria was trying to drain the rivers that were filling Lake Tiberias and some of the other things that are, they had going on in terms of their water supply, because water is everything there. It's the desert land, right? So water's everything. And there's, water there at the Gaza Strip, and they have the ocean and things like this. I don't know how much rainfall they get. There's a guy who was working on greening the desert. This guy, Jeff Lawton, he does food for us. And desalinating the lands there have been, struck by like waves or whatever, ocean waves that have come in, and the soil has a lot of salt in it, surrounding these countries. Because all these places in the world, you have to live by water, especially in the desert. And so water and oil, you have these natural resources, and then they have fresh water, which is a big deal there. And they have these rivers running through these countries, and if they can, prevent the water from flowing to the various countries, and, Israel in this case. And so, there's all these factors. And so Trump has obviously made a deal with this guy, and he's going to make a deal with Egypt. But the reason they can make a deal is they're carving up this Palestinian land. They're getting rid of the Palestinian peoples. Palestine's not going to exist at all. I mean, this is what's got to happen. It's what Israel has wanted all along. And Trump's plan already, which is radical, this guy's not shooting it down. Trump's invited him to the Oval Office, so he's going to give him some considerations, like they want to have this relationship. And it's going to be a business one. They're going to make some sort of bank on this. There's going to be something that they have, this stuff with Jordan, which is completely fucked because it's like almost like it's a genocide in a sense. You're taking these people and they're just taking their homeland. Like, they're just like, fuck you guys, get off your land. And we're going to divvy it up like some rich guys at a golf course going into some impoverished area and finding some way to steal the land from these, people who own homes there. And they turn it into something nice, right? Whereas in India, they flooded out all these people by the river, and they were going to develop this riverfront property, this river that ran through this area. And there's all these call centers and all these things that are going in. And these people, who live in these little shacks on the riverside, they were either killed or washed out, and then they had to go somewhere else, right? Fuck you guys, you're not living here anymore. And so, because the riverfront property was being developed. And so, this is what happens. Rich people do this shit all the time.
Three of us, and we'll have some others helping, and we're going to have some others at a very high level helping, and the whole thing will come. It's not a complex thing to do. And with the United States being in control of that piece of land, a fairly large piece of land, you're going to have stability in the Middle East for the first time. And
how does that fucking even equate, right? How does America get Gaza? Like, that was never thought of. Oh, we'll just have Gaza. We'll take Greenland, and we'll take, he's just glomming onto shit. And, this is going to, at some point, people are going to be like, we got to stop this guy, right? This is what the Democrats said, he was going to be a dictator on day one. Like, the rest of the world is going to sit by, and America just starts taking shit. Well, we'll take Gaza, we'll take Greenland, we'll take the Panama Canal. Hey, Canada, you want to be a state? Well, fuck you, you're going to get tariffs, right?
The Palestinians, or the people that live now in Gaza, will be living beautifully.
See, he doesn't even want to call them Palestinians because it's not Palestine anymore. It's some American state. It's flag land. Somebody proposed, I'll find that later.
In another location. They're going to be living safely. They're not going to be killed, murdered, and having to leave every 10 years, because I've been watching this for so many years. It's nothing but trouble.
Yeah, because Israel wants their land. It's not, it's not, these people are being killed and murdered, these poor people. We gotta ship them out to various other places in the world.
Everyone's being killed. They're being robbed. It's like living in hell, and they're going to end up having a great home, great families that don't have to get mugged and killed and beaten up and harassed by Hamas and everybody else.
You mean everybody else? You mean Israel? It's not Hamas, it's Israel.
And
They're not being harassed by Hamas. I mean, whatever thug stuff's going on there, they're being harassed by Israel, right? The videos that were coming out, even from Jewish people who were publishing these things, was Israeli soldiers beating the shit out of Palestinian people, including their kids. I mean, I've seen these videos for years. It's been on Facebook. There's groups about this, like Jewish People for Peace or some things like this. There were Jewish people who were appalled by the way that their country was treating these Palestinian people. And so, that's I mean, Trump.
I know we'll be able to work something, and what you just said about the 2000 is fantastic. It's so beautiful. It's music to
It's music to my ears. I just heard about these cancer kids, and now we're solving problems left and right.
my ears. But we're going to be able to work something, and I know we'll be able to work something also with I believe, not 100%, but 99%. We're going to work out something with Egypt.
But Mr. President, during your election campaign, Mr. President, how is the U.S. going to own Gaza? Your White House has made clear taxpayer dollars won't be used for this. So what money are you going to use to buy Gaza?
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace, and there's not going to be any problem, and nobody's going to question it.
Jesus Christ. Like, you just took Gaza because you said so? Like, how does that work, right? That you've just taken a piece of land and America now owns it? America owns the land. It's not a state. They don't have voting rights. It's a property. America just has this property they didn't pay for. It's not owned by Israel. No one can, the only people who can give it to you are the Palestinian people. There's some kind of UN charter there, whatever it was, the partition of the land. They partitioned Palestine, which was owned by England. And now what? Like, who owns it now? Like, who technically owns, the land of the Gaza Strip, which is part of this Palestinian land that was offered to these people? They had this country called Palestine, and there was no Israel. And they carved out a big section of it and called it Israel in 1945. The UN did, but there was some, official UN bullshit thing. Again, and Trump's saying, well, there's nobody owns it now, so U.S. no, we own it. Just plant a fucking flag there. I mean, and you think, well, this guy's solving problems. You can't do shit like this, right? It's funny, he's going full Trump, and it's not funny for these 1.7 million people who've just been displaced, and means that you can bully people out of it. And what they're doing is taking these people, refugees, and then turning this nice land into something that's going to be profitable. And all the people that are getting a piece of this, like Trump knows how to divvy up pieces of it, they'll all have interests there, right? Jordan and Egypt will get shit out of it, and they just have to, ethnically cleanse this place and just take the people off and dump them somewhere else, right? And Israel, the big claim to fame for Jewish people is to talk about the Holocaust, and that everything that they do is justified by how they were mistreated by the Germans and the other countries involved in the Holocaust, right? But now you've done the same exact thing to the Palestinian people. Like, you've put them in an open-air prison for years, and you've starved them, and you've abused them, and you've, fed them from developing their lands, all these things. And now you're just flat-out ethnically cleansing them, right? And America is helping. Like, you can't do shit like that to people. You can't treat people like that without it having come back on you, just in terms of the divine forces. And so, it's really fucking bad. Okay, so let me talk about the spy here, then we'll go back to the Trump thing with Jordan, because I want to insert this here, because it's kind of important. So, this show was made in 2019, I believe, and it was just put up on Netflix. I don't know originally. It was made for Netflix. I must have watched a few spy things, because I'm getting all the spy stuff recommended to me, so it's been up there for a while. But it seemed like they just re-released it. I don't know what that's all about. But anyways, it was up on Netflix. And it's very kind of, given all the things that are happening. So he plays a Mossad spy. And the spoiler alert, it's not like that kind of a show like I was saying, or maybe earlier. It's not really a spoiler alert show because it starts off with the Syrian military going to a Jewish guy's house. It's an old Jewish businessman living in Syria, and they bring him over to the prison, and he's writing a letter. And Sacha Baron Cohen has got no fingernails. They've taken his fingernails because they've tortured him, and he's writing a letter to his wife, and he can't remember his name because he's so embedded. Which is kind of they don't make the case for it, which I'll explain when I go through the narrative. And so the movie starts off. This is a true story, based on whatever the Israeli Mossad version of this guy, this what they consider a hero. And he was an Arab Jew from Egypt, I believe. He was in Egypt. And he was getting other Jewish people, including his family, out of Egypt and into Israel. And he was good at it. And he was efficient, and he was now doing kind of a remedial job, which he felt was beneath him. And he's applying to the Israeli government to do this kind of work. So Israel is engaged in a war with Syria, in which Syria's supposedly bombing the people, like just bombing the civilians and farmers and civilian, like all these, this is the narrative that they're giving, and they're bombing a certain region, and they're obviously doing something in another region, trying to distract Israel from that area, like along the border there, between the northern border between the two countries called the Golan Heights. And so Syria is, up to something, and it's a very chaotic country where the leadership is changing hands all the time, and everyone's paranoid there, and Israel's not been able to get a spy in there. And so they're looking for someone to train quickly and get in there, and they pick Sacha Baron Cohen, like it's like some drawn-out process, but they pick the guy, and he's a natural, but his handler sees he's a little bit too eager, and he takes too many chances, and he's just lost a similar guy to that, and he had to go to the guy's wife and say, your husband's been a Mossad agent, and you didn't tell you because they make you lie about it, and he's dead, so, and the woman didn't respond well, and the guy's kind of haunted by it. So, there's this element. Again, it's trying to humanize this whole fucking process, which, like it's hard to believe that these people are human given all the, stuff that goes on, right? So Sacha Baron Cohen goes to like Buenos Aires and Europe, and he connects with a Syrian ambassador, and he befriends the guy. And like if they're already like decadent, weird stuff. The guy's wife grabs Sacha Baron Cohen's crotch. Sacha Baron Cohen, like you're waiting for him to bust out in some Borat shit. Like it's just, he's not really a real person. He does these characters, and when you hear him interviewed, he's kind of like creepy. If you hear him be himself, and so like it's very off-putting. I can't say his acting was bad, but it was weird. Because it seems like he's just playing one of his characters, and you're waiting for the jokes, and they don't come, right? The bizarre jokes that he does, right? And so, it's a weird thing to see him in a serious role. And so, the guy, he makes friends with his ambassador, and the ambassador gives him a letter to get into Syria. But that's not enough, so he has to, like hook up with this other guy, who's on a boat, the guy's some rich man who's, going to help get him through. So just to get into the country, it's like hard to do. And this rich guy brings him in his car, and Sacha Baron Cohen gives the head military guy his expensive watch, because Sacha Baron Cohen is posing as a rich merchant businessman who's going to move his business to Syria and support the Syrian government and the people and these politicians. And so he can't tell his wife, and they make it like it's a big love story between him and his wife, like they really love each other. And he just abandons his wife for years, and she's got 2 kids. They have 2 kids, and he's not even really contacting her. Like he's just in Syria. And so he's going through this checkpoint, and he gives this guy a watch, and they're searching through his luggage, and he's got whatever the device they use to do Morse code, right? He's got all these things hidden in various, they're built into some of his stuff, but if they go through them, they're going to find him, and they're going to kill him right there at the border. So he says something to the guy, and the guy says, okay, put his stuff away. And he gets back in the car, and the guy he's riding with said, look, my life is on the line here, too. I got to know what you said to the guy to let you not have him search your luggage. And he said, well, I said that I'm a single man and I have needs, and there was some pornography in there. And they all have a good laugh. Like, he had a good laugh at the soldier, and then, this thing. But, we're trying to hide these. He's got C4 in his soap and shit like that, right? Which was stupid for them to do. Like, he should have been able to put the shit together in the country rather than try to take it through this checkpoint, because it's pretty brutal. So he gets this rich apartment, this expensive apartment across from the military building, and he starts befriending all these powerful people. He gets his business going, and he's taking pictures and sending the pictures back, the negatives back in furniture that he's shipping out of the country, the Syrian furniture. And he's wrapping it in newspaper that has the local newspapers, so they're getting all this info. It's a very closed country. So he's providing a shit ton of info, and then he starts infiltrating the higher ranks of the government, the military. He befriends this kid who's like kind of a drunken kid who's like misbehaving because his uncle's a general. And he goes up there to the front line, and he sees Lake Tiberias where the Golan Heights are. And he's looking over, and this other high-ranking guy takes him around and says, you want to shoot some Jews? He's like, he's making Sacha Baron Cohen take a machine gun and shoot these Jewish farmers and kids that are running around. And Sacha Baron Cohen starts breaking out in a sweat. And then the guy says, no, I'm just fucking with you. And like, whatever, you can't shoot him. And meanwhile, they're showing his wife go through hell. Like, she's, struggling. She has, she's raising 2 kids by herself and working a job and not getting any sleep. And she has no idea where her husband is. And like, she's, they're not really taking care of her. And she's, whatever. So she's coming apart. And he's like living this party lifestyle. And he's staying faithful to his wife. And this young soldier that he befriended is gay and wants to have sex with him. He's got all these things he's got to navigate, right? He's running around the border, and he goes and finds a farmer and tells him he's being chased by these guards, and Syrian guards. We didn't see his face, so he's not outed, but he's running around and doing all this stuff. And he tells this farmer about all the things that he's seen, and the farmer goes back and reports to the base, and he's sending all this intel. And so the ambassador that Sacha Baron Cohen's character originally got an endorsement letter from comes back into the country, and he's trying to take over the government. And they switch prime ministers like every couple of years. The government's in total chaos, and they want to have a coup. And so Sacha Baron Cohen knows all these rich and powerful people in the government and the military, and he starts having these parties in his big ass apartment. And this guy wants him to have parties. They're kind of like, smoking hookah, orgy type of decadent parties. And he has a couple parties, and then all these people come. And then this ambassador guy, and he's got this one guy who's like is really like intense looking dude that's in charge of his security, who's very suspicious. And they just kill everybody. They go and kill all these generals. They get the prime minister to sign a paper saying that he's abdicating the throne. And they kill this general. They capture all these people coming out of Sacha Baron Cohen's party. And then he's like in with the new prime minister because he's done all this work for him, including this party, helps him get, whatever. And then they bring in bin Laden's dad, who's going to be building something that's highly secret. Nobody knows about it. And Sacha Baron Cohen is tasked with, because he's a merchant, with bringing in the materials to do it. And it turns out to be giant pumps that they're going to use to pump out the water in the rivers to dry up the lake and the fresh water so Israel won't get the fucking water, right? And it's all this stuff. And they're making the Syrians sound really bad and the Israelis like victims. But like the kid said that at the border that Israel's beating the shit out of the Syrian army. Like they're all, Sacha Baron Cohen plants trees so these guys have shade. They have these bunkers. And the Israeli army can't see, and so eventually they're going to bomb those trees. Like he's in this powerful position, and so there was this kind of intense moment where it looks like he almost gets caught. He's going to get caught, and so you just don't know when. And the prime minister says that there's a spy, and it sounds like they make it sound like they think it's him, but then he offers Sacha Baron Cohen a position to help. And they don't tell you what it is because they use this as dramatic kind of, license. And they show him go back to Israel to visit his wife and get debriefed. And they want to offer him the the head of the Defense Department in Syria. Like he's infiltrated that far into the to the everybody, and they just love the guy. And he's he's got access to all the information. He's now going to be in charge of the Defense Department. But he comes back, and his brother got put on the teletype, the on the the whatever it is, the Morse code thing, and he had given his wife a Singer sewing machine. He shipped it back from Syria. And he asked the guy, he didn't know it was his brother. So he's going back and forth, and he's receiving the messages from his the spy brother, his other brothers, the guy who lives in Israel is receiving his messages, and he says he wants to check on the Singer, and the guy goes, "Is that some kind of code name, right? The Singer, but it's the sewing machine." And then he goes over to his sister-in-law's house and sees a sewing machine, and he realizes his brother's the spy. And he's flipping out because he knows his brother's going to get killed and it's going to destroy his family. And his brother comes back and he confronts his brother, and his brother lies to him. And his wife knows that something's up because he freaks out in a department store. Like he's like not the same guy, and he's like mentally not okay. They want to check his receipt as he's leaving he's buying all these appliances for his wife because she doesn't have shit. She doesn't have a phone or a TV or anything that, he's been accustomed to now because he's got all this money and, this role that he's playing, right? And, she sees that something's going on. She confronts him and his handler. Like, his handler's been, like, friends with her, trying to, help her out, whatever. And she confronts them, and they just won't tell her the truth that she knows. Like, that he's, like, whatever he is. He's not, the cover story's not working. And he has nightmares, and he's saying names in his sleep. He's killed all these people that were his friends. They were Syrian people, but he ended up being friends with them. He's playing this role. And they're like having, real relationships because you get embedded. This is the fucked up thing about being spies. I've talked about this. Like, there's so many of these movies about spies. Well, I'll talk about that at the end. And so he goes back anyway. And the government wants him to go back because he's got this really unique position. But everyone kind of knows he's going to get caught and killed. And eventually the Russians come in and they have this device that can track people sending out Morse code signals. And there's been some hints about it happening, and they catch the guy. So they catch him, and that's where they pull his nails off, and they torture him. And he the wife is going to France and has this French lawyer that the handler ends up calling a frog, like a French frog, like it's a derogatory term for French people. But this guy's a human rights lawyer. He's trying to get the husband back, and this handler goes to her and goes, "I think we're gonna we're working on getting a deal." She goes, "Are you reading the papers from Egypt and from all these surrounding countries, the surrounding Arab countries? They're all laughing at the Syrians for allowing this guy to dupe them, right? And they've embarrassed the whole country." He goes, "Of course they're going to fucking kill him. Like he's humiliated their government, right?" So they hang the guy in the square. They put some, Muslim writing on him, like these things, hanging over him. And they leave him there for 2 weeks just hanging in the city in front of everybody. And then they don't give the remains back to Israel, which is a big thing for Israelis always want the remains of their dead. It's a thing for them, right? And the wife is still, like, as of when they made the movie, I don't know if she's still alive now, but like 2019, was still actively pursuing getting her husband's remains back, right? It's a whole thing, right? So it's a whole, like, he was like one of the greatest spies of all time. But it shows you how twisted the whole fucking thing is, like how inhuman it is to the people, the families, and the whole thing that he's manipulating people in Syria. Not all of them are horrible people. They're all going to be what they are, and they all get dragged in. Everybody he had contact with now is considered a potential spy, and they were all his friends, and they're being tortured and shit. And like, it's that kind of place. This is their story, and then they talk about how. All of his intel was used, including the trees he planted, was used when they did the 6-Day War, which, Israel says they were attacked on 6 fronts, but the reality was, we know about the operation, the USS Liberty ship that the Israeli army tried to sink, and that whole thing, which was, was a whole, clearly was them being aggressive with America even. They've stolen our secrets and stole our nuclear secrets and spied on us and have spies in our government and, all these things, right? Like they've mistreated even their allies with this Mossad bullshit. And, you know, it's just not them. It's all the countries that have these things. And, you know, they glorify these, you know, with these TV shows and movies, spies. And spies are a bad thing, right? Like it creates, you know, I mean, the mistrust it creates. There was the age of Dharma, which was brought in by the Mahabharata, was the end of the age of Dharma. And Dharma means duty. And so the Mahabharata brought in the Kali Yuga. And, you know, there's some conversations in the war where the end of Dharma is happening. So before that, there were these rules of engagement in war, and the Mahabharata broke those down. Like you wouldn't fight at night. And oftentimes in the Mahabharata, these were family and friends were fighting each other. And they'd have dinner together, you know, between the war, like when the war would just stop at night. But by the end, they were fighting through the night, and they were breaking every possible rule. There were all these rules of engagement. Like there was these people who had these spiritual abilities to charge these arrows with, you know, whatever kind of, you know, these mantras and things. And the arrows had all these special powers in them, like to do all kinds of damage. But you couldn't shoot the arrows at civilians. You could only shoot them at somebody else who was trained in these arts, right? Like there's all these rules of engagement. And, you know, just in terms of, you know, all of it, right? There was these laws of Dharma that existed, and it was, you know, in India, but globally. And there was no such thing as assassins, like all that kind of stuff, right? Like there was, you know, stabbing somebody in the back or poisoning, like all that kind of thing. That was something that's brought in, you know, during the Kali Yuga. And all this spying and all this, you know, these, you know, all of it. Like, you know, now catfishing, like everything that people do that's like, you know, just it's a level of, it's not fair. Like it's, you know, kind of, you know, it's very greasy, right? And, you know, it's something to be aware of, like this stuff with the spies and every country having these spies and all this shit, that it wasn't always like that, right? And so, you know, in the age of Dharma, you know, there's this that didn't do that shit, you know, like, but then that ended, and now it's just anything goes, and foul play, and, you know, people being deceptive, and, you know, even your loved ones and all this stuff, all the duplicity that goes on, and it's just, it makes life sucky. You know, you can't trust anyone, all these things that we know about. And these intelligence agencies, spy agencies, are the worst of it. And you can just see it, like, even they're trying to make this thing, like this guy's a hero or whatever. And like I said in my last video, you know, you're going to root for the protagonist, like it just happens. Like, even if you don't like the group that the guy's in, or like, you know, like Mossad or whatever going into it, you know, it's harder for you to get invested, but they just make it so it's like that. You root for serial killers. Like, they can just do that now. They know how to get people to root for the protagonist. Like, they can make the protagonist a serial killer, and, you know, you end up, like, rooting for the guy. Like, and it's all these movies where there's thieves. Like, how many times do you see where the protagonists are criminals, and they're stealing stuff, or they're murderers, or they're hitmen, or they're spies, and it's just all these bad people doing bad shit. And, you know, it's like they should get caught because they're doing bad things, right? And so, you know, inevitably, when you're operating on this level of duplicity, it has to come back around to you and your country, and what you're doing to other people is going to be done to you. And it's so short-sighted, and all this stuff where people are, you know, paranoid now, and they all have their own group of people, and everyone's going to try to control and gather information, the age of information gathering that we live in. And it's just so fucked, right? And, you know, manipulate, and then doing things, you know, this sociopathic way that Trump's doing, where you have loopholes, and you can bully your way through and use whatever kind of bribes and whatever he's giving to the people here in these various countries that are, you know, Egypt and this guy, the king of Jordan. And so, you know, it's pretty fucked. All right, let's get back to it here. I just want to add one thing that I forgot. So, you know, he started to, and they tried to make a case that the guy forgot his own name, but he had just gone home to see his wife, and he came back and he was busted like a couple months after that. And so, you know, he was struggling with his identity, and he was resisting cheating on his wife, but there was all this decadent things going on with all this parties and things. And there was a guy that he worked with who had a daughter, who the guy wanted him to marry his daughter. So he started dating the girl as a cover, but then broke up with her. And, you know, a bunch of dramatic things happened to make that happen. But he goes back, and his handler says, they just saw his wife, and he's like, you got to go marry that girl because they're going to think you're funny in that way, right? They're going to think you're gay. And so, yeah, again, this is 1963 or whatever it is. And so he was having to go back and stop the breakup. And this girl wanted to marry him. He was rich and, whatever. They tried to make him charismatic. But I talked about how there was some guy infiltrated one of these right-wing, some FBI guy or something. And he was embedded in this group for like 14 years, and he had a wife and kids. Like, that's how deep the cover gets. Like, imagine being one of those kids and the wife, the woman that he married, and, all the things that he pretended to be, and find out he's your enemy, right? Like, the enemy of this group is the FBI. And we know this from Stockholm Syndrome and the Stanford experiment and these things, where it takes you about a week to get indoctrinated into a group culture. Like, if I went to work at a restaurant, or you go with some group of people, if there's a culture there, even in a new team, a new place, and they have their own like rituals and their own lingo. You have a job or a group of friends you hang out with, and all of a sudden you're adopting and copying their behaviors, right? Patty Hearst was a heiress, rich, for the Hearst family, a multi-millionaire family, right? Would be a billionaire family now. And she was kidnapped, and within a week she was identifying with the kidnappers and holding a machine gun and being a part of their movement, right? Like this thing called Stockholm Syndrome. You get sucked into these things. I went to work at this restaurant, and I, immediately didn't like the place that when you work at a place, any kind of a place that like a restaurant where there's always going to be issues, like some of the things were how far you had to walk from the kitchen out to the restaurant, like out to the place, because you're spending a lot of your time where you could be making money walking like a long distance or upstairs or whatever it is, right? And I've had these restaurants where they wanted me to carry a fucking dessert cart out to the, shit like that. And it was all the way in the kitchen. And, you're spending all this time when, you're losing, your customers are getting pissed off because the service is bad and you can't run as many tables, So there's things that make the setup, the system more efficient or not. And then there's the dynamics that are there. And I go in there my first day, and this girl comes up to me and goes, you should quit immediately. And she says it right in front of other waiters and waitresses. And they go and run and tell the manager, and they fire her on the spot. And I end up like having another job, also was interviewing for, and I went and took that job. And they were like, oh man, don't listen to that girl. And I'm like, it isn't just the girl, it's the whole fucking place, right? But if I started working there, I would have got sucked into their whole bullshit, right? Their whole whatever was going on there. Because that's how it worked. When you waited tables, there was this, the dynamics and power dynamics and all this stuff that exists in the culture there. Every job I've had has that. And before you know it, at first you're an outsider and you're looking at the thing and how strange the people are, and then you're one of them. This is Stockholm Syndrome. You get sucked into the group dynamics. And even if you're a loner and an outsider like I am, even I couldn't resist those things. Like, it's just, there's a pull of it. There's a whole lingo, like I said, all these things. And so when you start pretending to be somebody and you live a life of that person, you go deep undercover, you become that person. And you become that criminal and you start getting into it. And like you just, if you saw the Stanford experiment, it was a psychological experiment where they closed off a floor of Stanford University and turned it into a prison. And everyone, including the professors who were the wardens, within 6 days, it was a 2-week experiment. They had to stop it after 6 days because it went south so quickly, right? It was completely fucked. It was a mind fuck for even one of the professors, he had a colleague come in who wasn't a part of the experiment. He was asking about the experiment. And he's like, this fool is talking to me, and I got a prison break on my hands. And he's starting to get agitated, nervous. And then he realized, oh my God, I've lost it. Like I'm not acting as a counselor and a professor. I'm acting like a fucking warden. And he had to end the experiment. And all the kids were fucked up by it. Like everyone's like fucked up. It's a famous thing. It's like a movie about it. And so like this is a messed up thing, right? Pretending to be someone you're not and going undercover in these, clandestine spy operations. They're bad things, right? And they always make an excuse that the other side is bad and there's bad people. and we need to do these bad things and be deceptive, but it hurts everybody. And this is what I'm talking about across the board, and this is, going into this thing with Trump and all of it. This is the world's been made a mess of these organizations, the CIA and the FBI and, the Mossad and MI6 and, every group of people have these things, these people, spies and criminal organizations, they all have it, right? And now all the spying that they do on you, it's made it into such a paranoid world where no one can trust each other. And just at an individual basis, everyone lying and catfishing and deceiving people is just fucking bad, right? That's why people are thirsting for the fucking truth. That's why the truth community exists, because of all this stuff. All right, so let's get back to it here. Okay, so we got a snowstorm coming in. I gotta go get fucking eggs. And I could have stopped at the store yesterday. I was at Whole Foods and they had none. Like Whole Foods is just gone. And having chickens, there's a certain color of the yolk that when you see these pale yolks from these, industrialized chickens, it just, just the color itself, these very light yellow yolks that look like they're just dead. And you see the color of especially the chickens in the when they start laying in the spring when they're eating a ton of fresh green grass and the new grass, and they have these really dark orange yolks. And there's only a couple of brands of eggs that have these kind of yolks, which means the rest of them are just eating that, shitty grain food, and they're calling them free-range chickens, but they're not, right? But anyways, so I gotta go do that. So I want to get a little bit more of this done. I got some great comments I want to get to, like pro-Trump comments about this thing. And some reaction to my comments about the press secretary, too, that were like, just the kind of stuff that I've been expecting. I don't get very much anymore, which is great. But, when it does come, it gives me an opportunity to talk about it. And then there are some comments that I'll probably cover in my next video. The bot comments are back, the long ones, which, I think they have a trial on my channel, this channel, but my other channels, there's none. So that's all interesting. But let's get back into it here.
And we're going to run it very properly, and eventually we'll have economic development at a very large scale, maybe the largest scale on that site. And we'll have lots of good things built there, including hotels and office buildings and housing and other things.
So, what they're saying here, which you should be concerned about, is the American government can just grab land and kick people off of it. And all you people who think Trump's great, this is Agenda 30 kind of bullshit right here. And you're like, well, it's just some brown Palestinian people that have a Muslim religion and they're in a foreign country and they're not. That's you too. There's them, and then there's us, and there's them. There's all of us, and we have different sort of categories and classes, but we're all like the people. They're the so-called like muggles, right? We're the people who are not connected, and then there's the people who are in the upper echelon, or the people who want to be in there. There's groups of people who are wannabes, but Trump isn't a wannabe. He's made it into the club. And this King Abdullah, he's a king, right? These people. And how they view the rest of us as livestock, right? And that, what they call it in the Goyim, right? And this, for the Israel, it's just, this is how it's viewed, right? You're not on the same level. You're just there to be moved around, and you don't have any rights. And they can steal your property anytime they want, and they can kick you off of it. So endorsing Trump and this bullshit, what they're doing to the Palestinian people, they can do to you. And if you're against this behavior for yourself or people like you, if you're upset by it, where a bank could come in and claim they own your house when they don't, and the powers that be, and Trump's going to back the bank because he's just like that. He's always been like that. And so, like what they're doing to the Palestinian people, where America just can claim ownership of Palestine without even a purchase price, right? The thing's worth $1 trillion probably, that chunk of land. You broke it up real estate-wise in terms of what Trump's wants to develop it as, right? And then they're all going to get a piece of it, these kings and these people, these rulers, they're all... And, the one good thing about that spy TV show with Sacha Baron Cohen, it showed you how decadent these rulers are. They all come out moralistic, but they're all, using drugs, and they're all, going to, like, orgies and doing these things. They have, poor moral values, right? They're just, they're deviant people. These people who make it into the upper echelon. And Trump has always been that way. Trump has always cheated on his wives with porn stars and prostitutes. I mean, he had women that he just paid to be in an apartment for him, like this kind of thing, right? And and Melania ain't digging it. And so, if you're okay with them just moving, like he's just saying, I mean, it's kind of funny because it's so fucked up. Like I like these things. I like different stuff, but I have to, if you have a heart, you have to feel for the Palestinian people. Like Trump's saying how bad luck they have and what they've experienced. But, people fight for their land, and this is, people are into it. I would say just move. Like, if I was there, I'd be like, move it. I don't care. Like, I've moved my whole life. I don't, I'm not somebody who, land, there's beautiful land all over the place, right? And so you have to live where you're supposed to live based in God's will. I don't get attached to these things like, people do, but people do get attached, and they have communities, and they have, these things, and, and they have, they've fought for these things. They've endured so much. And Trump's like, America owns it now. Get the fuck out, right? And so, this is bad policy. This is where the powers that be, and Trump's supposed to be one of you. He's supposed to be about, making America great again. How is this making America great again? How does this represent your values as a person? Who do you identify this with? Do you identify, again, get rid of the prejudice against the Muslim religion, and you're, if you're a Christian, like if you just look at the groups of people here without, understanding the religious dynamics or any of these things, you have what the Israeli government's doing to the Palestinian people and expanding into an area where you have, people who don't have a military right to an ability to defend themselves are unarmed and unqualified. And they've had these, these land grabs there. And now they're just going to take these people and get rid of them. Who do you identify with? Who do you feel bad for? Like if you're going to make a movie, like who would be the victims in this situation? Who would be the people that, a hero would stand up for? Who would Jesus stand up for? Who would, any religious or spiritual figure stand up for in this situation? Would he stand with the bullies, or would he stand with the people who are being abused, which is the Palestinian people? It's very simple. It's just like anybody should be able to get that, right? If you can, take off your goggles of, your Trump goggles or your Trump, Trump derangement syndrome bullshit.
Things, and we'll make that site into what it should be. And the people from Gaza who wouldn't be able to be there for years, because you're talking about just to get it and prepare it.
Yeah, why is that? Because Israel bombed the shit out of it with American bombs? Is that why?
To take care of all of the problems that currently it.
The thing is that when they ask these questions, which is crazy, they're asking them like this is actually going to fucking happen. When Trump said this, people are like, oh my God, this is so batshit crazy. It's happening, right? Right now, unless something changes, this is going, unless there's some resistance somewhere, this is what Trump is fucking doing. This is happening.
It has, as you know, tunnels, and people are in those tunnels, and you have some good people and some bad people, and you may have...
They're tunnel people, right? Just like cancer kids and tunnel people. We got to deal with all this shit. There's
hostages right now. You have the hostages possibly there. They don't know where they are. And, I have a Saturday deadline, and I don't think they're going to make the deadline personally. I think they want to play tough guy, but we'll see how tough they are.
Jesus Christ. When he talks like this, right? Trump is not a physical person, and I don't care if he is or not. But he talks like this, right? And when you're old, there's no physical violence, in terms of like fighting. Like people fight with you're gonna die of a heart attack. Like you're gonna pull every muscle in your body and break some bones just by you can't engage in physical activity. The older you get, the less your body is into this kind of shit, right? Any kind of physical conflict.
But it's going to be a wonderful thing. It's going to be wonderful for the Middle East. I think it'll turn the Middle East. I think you're going to have peace in the Middle East. You're going to eventually have peace in the Middle East.
There's never going to be peace in the Middle East. They don't like each other. The Sunni and the Shiite Muslims don't get along, and there's different groups and very violent, long history of violence, and and Israel's always going to be
Couldn't this deadline risk undermining the talks that you're having with the king today, and risk the kind of wider peace that you're trying to?
Because that's not. We're not talking about a big situation. We're talking about something that can go very quickly. We're talking about it's going to go quickly. It's not going to take a long time. Okay, that's not going to take a long time. You know bullies. You know what a bully is, right? You know the bully. I've always, and I found it throughout my life.
You're calling Hamas that's hiding out in some fucking tunnel the bully? Like, Trump is the epitome of a bully. He's bullied in business all these hard working people. It's his history, and he bragged about it. Like, he bragged about it on The Apprentice. His negotiations were all like he's bullying Canada right now with tariffs. That's what a bully does. He's a fucking bully, right? And for him to let's finish this thing here.
A bully is the weakest person, and they're bullies. Hamas is bullies.
Hamas is bullies. But Israel, who is, the bully is the one who has, like an advantage, an unfair advantage in any situation. A bully is the person that can kick the other people's asses when it's not even a fair fight, right? And they're using that as and again, that in itself doesn't make somebody a bully, but they use that to extort things from people by threatening them. And it doesn't mean a physical fight. Like, Trump has more expensive lawyers. If you remember from that show, the show about, I can't remember the name of it. It was on HBO, the show about Succession. And they go to their country house, like they got some huge thing in the Hamptons. They fly helicopters into these places. And they haven't been there like in a year or so. And they had a contractor that was getting work done, and they weren't paying him. So he owed the contractor $300,000 or something like that. And he wasn't paying the contractor, the guy, the head guy, the head of the family. And the contractor stuffed like 20 dead raccoons in the chimney, and they all rotted, and the house smelled like death, right? And so he got somebody out to clean it out, and he realized the contractor did it. And the Succession guy goes, "I'm going to pay you $100,000, and you're going to fucking take it. Because my lawyer I can call my lawyer, who's the president's lawyer, who's your lawyer." And, he's the guy, he was stiffing the guy. This is what Trump does, right? It's what rich people do all the time. You think that they're going to pay you because they have so much money, and oftentimes they don't have very much liquid money to spend. It's all, in these ways of evading taxes and foundations and all this shit, right? And they're not generous because they're hoarders. They're mentally ill hoarders that hoard large sums of wealth that could help so many different people. Wealth that they're not using, right? And so this is what he is. And so for him to call this other guy a fucking bully, right, Hamas a bully, I'm sure in a smaller level, if Hamas was real, and I don't know what it is, right, but I believe it's an Israeli asset, they're bullying people, right? They're certainly bullying like a gang. Like, all governments bully the people in some extent. But, Jesus Christ, Trump.
The weakest people are bullies. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Orange Man. All right, let's stop here. I got to go eat lunch and go get some fucking eggs, and I'll come back. Okay, so I went to get the eggs. Got some other stuff that we needed, some kimchi, some other things. Right here about my shopping trip. And so, I had these thoughts before we get into this next piece. And so, if you guys remember what I said about this with Trump, and I've said it over and over again, that when something is fake and staged, like, there's two things. There's real things that happen that they attach their agenda to. Real events, organic events, semi-organic events that are also manipulated and exaggerated and things. And then there's things that are completely manufactured and scripted. And what do I say about the ones that are manufactured and scripted? That they don't have any shelf life. I mean, I said this over and over again. I said this about Trump's thing when it happened. I've said about all these other things. And, you can bear this out by thinking through the things that you think are fake and the things that are real, right? They don't have any sticking power. And so, the things that happen in real life that you can see that they are staged, like if they drop a bomb on someplace, well, they've dropped a bomb. And so the devastation's real, right? But when things are faked where there's no bullets and, whatever it is, Trump really didn't get shot, that was a big kind of event when it happened. but it faded so quickly. And then they had a second assassination attempt, and then sort of a third one. And none of those stuck, right? The story hasn't stuck. The guys who are being tried, I mean, the guys who are, were involved. There's one guy who was on the second attempt was alive. The family of the people of the guy who supposedly did the first attempt, the failure of the Secret Service, the epic failure of the Secret Service, and all of it, right? It's disappeared, right? It's just like when Trump said lock Hillary up, and then right after the election, he's like, oh, that played well during the election. Because it was a WWE staged event. So when you hear that somebody passed away, a loved one, and you feel it, oh my God, this is real, this has happened. You're maybe in a state of disbelief, but you remember that moment. You remember that time, you remember hearing about it, you remember what's going on in your life. When JFK was shot, people remember where they were and all these things. It was an indelible impression, right? The Trump thing is barely a memory. But let's say someone called you up and said someone in your family's dead. You're like, I don't think they're really dead. Like, I don't feel it. And then you find out they weren't. Like, it was misinformation or whatever. Because when something's real, it stings and it leaves an impression, and it's, you feel it. Like, it's a real thing. Trump's shooting didn't feel that way. And people still talk about it because they want to use it as a weapon. But it was some WWE stage bullshit thing. And nobody talks about it anymore. I mean, other than a few people bring it up. They tried to kill the guy, stupid, commenters. But everyone else like, yeah, well, yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, yeah, I remember that what happened. Yeah, it looked kind of fake. And remember his ear wasn't really bleeding. And he said there was blood on his hand. It wasn't. And when it came out, there was no damage to his ear. Remember all that shit? Because it wasn't real. And so it was a fake thing. It was staged. All these staged things that they do, it's like watching a show, and it doesn't have the same effect as a real thing when you experience a real thing. And so he faked that fucking thing, and therefore he has become completely untrustworthy, which he was beforehand because the evidence was overwhelming, right? And so if you want to pin your hopes on this untrustworthy piece of shit, don't be upset when people tell you the truth, right? Because deep down you know the truth. And you're battling it with inside yourself that you're putting too much faith in a guy who is clearly just not a good person.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. President, you were saying that Palestinians will live somewhere else.
He's not trustworthy, and the things that he says he doesn't really mean and isn't going to do. He's making promises that he's going to break. Like it's, you've been with some person, either in a relationship or a parent or somebody who is always letting you down. They promise things, and you think they're going to get better. You think they're going to do what they said they were going to do, and they never do it, right? That's this guy. He's that kind of person.
Somewhere else safe. Where exactly do you want them to live?
Well, it's not where I want them to live. It's going to be where we ultimately choose as a group. And I believe we'll have a parcel of land.
As a group? You mean in terms of what choice do they get? What choice do the Palestinian people get? You're saying that they're going to be, this is such a big fucking deal, right? And they're talking about, look at this question again. This guy's talking about like this is going to really happen.
And I found it throughout my life. A bully is the weakest person. And they're bullies. Hamas is bullies. The weakest people are bullies. You know that, right? All right, go ahead.
Mr. President, you were saying that Palestinians will live somewhere else safe. Where exactly do you want them to live?
Well, it's not where I want them to live. It's going to be where we ultimately choose as a group. And I believe we'll have a parcel of land in Jordan. I believe we'll have a parcel of land in Egypt. We may have someplace else. But I think when we finish our talks, we'll have a place where they're going to live very happily and very safely. And
okay, so when I talked about building a city like Phoenix to the AI bot, it said it would take like 10 years and maybe $1 trillion. And 2 cities in 2 different places, again, where resources are short and there's no water and all the infrastructure. I mean, before you can even move them there, like all you can move them in is tents and bring in humanitarian aid. And that shit dries up after a while, right? Because people, they're just doing it in the beginning. And then it's like, what are we going to do with these people? And then they go from being refugees to being criminals to being unwanted. And then the countries are like, all right, we want to make it look good in the beginning. But after a time, they just become a burden. And, building a city for them, So he would have two major cities that have to be built that would be, half the size of Phoenix or Philadelphia to house 1.7 million people. It's a shit ton of people in an area with limited resources, desert area. And so who's going to pay for that whilst you're cleaning up Gaza and then ultimately rebuilding that, which is going to take 10 years. And so before people can come back and inhabit it, and those people are never going to be welcome back. And so he's going to be dead before this thing is, these things are completed. And then there'll be, 2 or 3 different presidents by the time this thing is, by the end of this thing, right? So, it's a fucked plan. The fact that this is being talked about, it's not going to be upheld because the only person that really would be pushing for this would be Trump. If you have a Democratic president next term, and then you have all the liberals who are going apeshit because they believe that the Palestinian people are being abused, which they are, all the human rights people, which should be everybody, should be concerned about that. And this thing's never going to hold up. But once they get the Palestinian people out, that's it. That's all. He can promise them anything. He can promise the world how well they're going to be treated. But once they're out of Gaza, they're out of Gaza. And they're no longer a problem. And then they're just, they're just going to be refugees looking for a better life. And, wherever they go, they're going to be unwanted and unwelcome, right?
Don't forget, they only want to be on the Gaza Strip because they don't know anything else. They never had an alternative. And they don't want to be on the Gaza Strip, but they have no choice. They
don't want to be bullied by the Israelis. They want to be there. It's beachfront property. It's a nice place. Who's to say they don't want to be there? He's speaking for them because, it's convenient for him because he's a fucking narcissistic bully, right? Yeah, these guys, they don't even want to be in this land I want to develop. They want to be somewhere else, right? These animals that are living on this land don't want to be there when I build this shopping mall. They really want to be somebody else, so I'm going to relocate them with our bulldozer. We're just going to scurry off somewhere else where they'd rather be.
Have to be. And they're being killed there at levels that nobody's ever seen. No place in the world is as dangerous as the Gaza Strip. They don't want to be there. They have no alternative. When they have an alternative, not one person will want to stay where they are. Nobody wants to stay there. They're living in hell. It's a death trap.
Again.
Mr. President, how do you know that the Palestinians...
Again, he's attributing his what he would feel about it opposed to what they feel about it, which is, the epitome of narcissism and wishful thinking. But, he doesn't give a shit about these people. It's just a way to dismiss any argument. No, they don't really want to be there. Well, they're saying they want to be there. No, they're lying. They don't even know. I know what they really want. They don't know what they really want. I know what they really want. And when you got a motherfucker like this, when he starts saying that about you? When you say, no, we don't want this, the American people say they don't want it. He goes, no, you guys don't know any better. I know better. I know what you really want. You guys want to live in Agenda 31 housing. No, fuck you guys. You guys don't want to live in your houses. You guys want this. This is the kind of narcissistic fuck that this guy is, right? This is his potential. He's displaying it right here. And he's done this his whole life. He's been a slumlord, and he's got rid of these, rent controlled buildings, and he's done shit like this. It's been long-standing knowledge about him in New York City that he was, taking people out of their homes and developing these things, a real estate developer. And just so he could, do his flim-flam, live with a fucking gold toilet and his bullshit, right? His gaudy bullshit, while these people are being kicked out of their houses. He has no problem evicting people. It's it's one of his go-to moves.
Palestinians don't want to leave their land. Some people say this is ethnic cleansing. You won't be able to force them to leave their land.
We're moving them to a beautiful location where they have new homes.
Which doesn't exist yet. It isn't like there's just a development there. Why don't you move them to Springfield, Ohio, now that you've kicked out all the Haitians?
They can live safely where they'll have doctors and medical and all of those things, and I think it's going to be great. Yeah, any questions?
King Abdullah, what do you think about the U.S. taking over the Gaza Strip? Do you want to see the U.S. own the Gaza Strip?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, the president is looking at Egypt coming to present their plan As I said, we will be in Saudi Arabia to discuss how we can work with the president and with the United States. So I think let's wait until the Egyptians can come and present to the president and not get ahead of ourselves.
And is there a parcel of land in Jordan that you're willing to have Palestinians?
Well, I think what we said, I have to look at the best interests of my country. I think the president is very happy that we do this thing with 2,000 children as quickly as possible. And again,
The cancer kids.
I believe that the president is looking forward to getting a group of us Arabs here to discuss the overall plan.
And last question, the 2,000 children, are those from the Gaza Strip?
Absolutely, from the Gaza
Are
Strip.
you willing to change your mind, Mr.
That's
President?
from the Gaza Strip, the 2,000.
2,000 cancer kids. I didn't know about it until he said it, but now I'm an expert.
Are you willing to change your mind
Fuck. These 2,000 cancer kids.
if you hear the Egyptian and the Arab plan end of the month? If they present you something different, are you open to
I
another
think
plan?
we sort of have gone down the line. We know pretty much what is going to be presented. And I think it's going to be something that's going to be magnificent for the Palestinians. They're going to be in love with it.
Sure they are. An imaginary land, a fairy tale land you haven't even built yet, don't have the money for. You're saying you're not willing to pay for it, but you're willing to promise land in Jordan and frickin' Egypt, two places that's very firm about not wanting these refugees. I mean, this is so fucked. It's hard to it's hilarious how fucked it is, right?
I did very well with real estate. I can tell you about real
Oh
estate.
yeah, this is exactly like that, Trump. Exactly like the shit that you've done with real estate. And talk about the people that got hurt by your real estate deals. The people you stepped on, the fucking little people that you either didn't pay off or you screwed over in the original deal or you got evicted. And I mean, you can go through all of the claims against Trump and the many lawsuits and the many things that he did in New York and other places and all the shady dealing he did and all the fucking bullying, right? I mean, he's clueless, calling Hamas a bully.
They're going to be in love with it.
But Mr. President, does it concern you that moving 2 million people from
It's a
there?
very small number of people relative to other things that have taken place over the decades and centuries. It's a very small number of people, and they're living a terrible life. Look at the way they're living now. Nobody's living like that in the entire world.
Are you sure about that? You don't think there's other people worse off than the people in Gaza Strip? It's the only one you know about. There's lots of people. There's 28 million people that are straight up slaves. They're legitimate slaves. There's 28 million slaves in the world. That's probably a conservative number. I mean, that was from a few years ago. And so there's people living in slavery, human trafficking, all these things, right? There's people in the U.S. who have, like, bad lives like this. They live in areas like this. Not obviously war-torn, but, there's lots of people who have horrific conditions. And he's like, it's the worst place ever. It's always fucking the worst or the best or the biggest or the smallest or, it's always extremes with this fuck.
They're living under buildings that are mostly fallen down and will continue to fall down. And they're living under. People are being killed.
Why? What happened to those buildings in which they're falling down? Does Israelis bomb it? The Israeli army bomb it without provocation from the people and bomb innocent civilians and kill 40,000 children? Jesus Christ, Trump. I mean, how do you live with yourself? How do these fucking people live with themselves? Which is something I want to talk about when we get to the comment section.
Every day, the conditions are horrible. There are no conditions anywhere in the world that are worse than the Gaza Strip right now.
But don't you have concern that you can destabilize Jordan?
Because you saw pictures like a week ago and you knew nothing about it. I saw pictures from every angle, and now I know it's the worst place in the world.
You said all hell will break out if all the hostages are not released on Saturday. What did you mean by that? And are you encouraging Netanyahu to walk away from this deal? Have you talked about this with him?
So I've looked at at the condition of people coming out of the hostage situation, and it's horrible. I looked at the before and after yesterday. 3 young men. One is dead now, as you know. The older gentleman who died, which everybody said he was alive and well, he's dead.
He's dead, that guy.
But the 3
He was a cancer kid, and
young men, and I looked at them from a short while ago, and I looked at them now. They're emaciated.
they're emaciated. I saw him before and the after, fucking bad.
They look like Holocaust survivors. They look.
Well, let's bring that word up like as much as possible.
I mean, they'll get better, but
What do the Palestinians look like? Hiroshima survivors or Holocaust survivors, what do they look like? They're in an open air prison. Like, who's the ones that made them feel that way? It's not Hamas. Hamas didn't do that shit. Hamas doesn't have bombs like that, right? They don't have American bombs to drop on buildings where civilians live.
They're in rough shape. They were treated really badly, and we've heard things from them since. And I think the reason that Hamas is playing so key
Frankly, you know, you guys, I don't want to say it, but there's buggery going.
is because they saw the reaction to these three people that came out, and the other was, look, the one young lady had her hand blown off practically, and they were not in great shape either. But she's missing her fingers and a big part of her hand. You know what she did? She was stopping a bullet that was aimed at her. She went like that, and it blew off her hand.
Wait, is she Wonder Woman? Is she Wonder Woman? She blocked the bullet with her hand? Like, what the fuck?
No, I think I think they want time, because I think the people that they have living are in such bad shape. Because
Okay, we already heard this bullshit before. The question was, all hell is breaking loose. What does that mean? You've said shit like that. All hell is going to break loose. Like, own it. Like, own that shit. He doesn't. It never owns this stuff, right? You made a bold statement, and we all know what it implies, which means, you know, the all hell breaks loose means more dead Palestinians and children, Palestinian children and civilians. You know, children who are civilians and civilians, right? And so we know what that means. That's what it means. Say what it means, right? You're going to let the Israeli army go in there and just wreak havoc and just, you know, drop the population down so it's a more manageable population where they can be moved, ethnic cleansed a lot easier. Because it's a lot easier to move 800,000 people than it is to move twice that many.
they're sending the most healthy people out because they don't want to send the least healthy people out. And there was an uproar when they saw the people from yesterday. So these people are, so I don't want to do 2 and then we do another 2 in another week and then we do 4 in 3 weeks. No. They either have them out by Saturday at 12 o'clock or all bets are off.
Mr. President, would you still consider withholding aid to those countries if they don't accept your plans to accept?
Well, I don't want to say that because we've had such a good relationship and we're doing so well just in the short time that we've been talking. I mean,
by aid he means American taxpayer dollars that were given to these countries that are wealthy and oil-bearing countries, you know, that have their own income.
The king just made a statement. I didn't ask him to do that, about literally saving 2,000 young children from the Gaza Strip.
They're not saving them. They have cancer, and they've been in the Gaza Strip, which you says is the worst place on earth. They've had cancer in that place. And so they're not getting better. That doesn't mean they're going to be cured of cancer. I mean, they're going to God. They're going to some Libyan, what is it, the country, Jordan hospital, and they're going to die there in the hospital, like the ones who are terminal, and the rest are going to suffer whatever it is, right? But I mean, that's fucked. Like, you know, you didn't even know there's 2,000 cancer kids.
We didn't know about that. You didn't know about that. Nobody did, except for
this guy over here, this motherfucker.
The king and his son. I assume you told your son, right?
My son. I said, hey, there's some cancer kids. We're going to take the cancer kids in.
And I just thought it was great. No, I think we'll do something. I don't have to threaten with money. We contribute a lot of money to Jordan and to Egypt, by the way, a lot, to both. But I don't have to threaten that. I think we're above that. I do believe we're above that. So.
You're not above it, bro. You're Mr. Tariff Man. Tally Mr. Tariff Man. Tally my me banana.
Would you consider other countries, not Jordan and Egypt? There was talks about Indonesia, Albania, other places.
Yeah.
Albania, fuck. How does that come up?
Sure.
Sure,
we have
whatever. We're going to get right on that. Like, it's just a fucking bullshit thing they're saying. The big thing is to get the Palestinians out in any way, shape, or form. Get them the fuck out of the country and give Israel that, you know, the Gaza Strip. And they could be developed, and whatever peace America gets, whatever peace these other countries gets, whatever happens there, whatever they end up doing, you know, it's going to be, I mean, you know, you can tell when you have handlers, when there's a situation where it goes against everything that he said. And these questions were asked of him, or asked of his press secretary. He's against nation building. He's against getting mired down in a war-torn area, a ancient conflict. I mean, putting America slap down in the middle of this ownership of this land that eventually American troops are going to go into, all the things that are going to go with it, right? And so, and he's just going to bullshit whatever happens. Oh, it's going to be so great. We just got to get through this tough period, whatever bullshit things he says, right? But it's not going to be done. He's only here for, less than 4 years now. I mean, he's got a limited amount of time as president. He's a month into his presidency. And, the reality is, like, he might not even make it through this one. And he's making promises that aren't necessarily going to be kept by the American government, depending on what a mess this is. And then Israel will just take over the land because the Palestinians will be gone and they're not coming back in. And once the Palestinians are gone, the Israelis get the land. That's why he's willing to compromise all the things he says that he believes as a politician and the things that he says as a candidate for president, that he wasn't going to do these things, and he's doing all of them here. It's completely fucked, but he's owned by Israel.
We have a lot of people that want to get involved. There's a great sense of wanting to help the Palestinians. They really
Is there that sense of that? Like, it doesn't feel like that to me. Does it feel like that to you, that there's a sense that all these people want to help them? They really want to help these people. They're really concerned about them, and they're concerned about their land. They want to take them away from beachfront property and stick them in the middle of the fucking desert in some tent cities and watch them wither away and die and just, forgotten people, right? Like, what happened to the Palestinians? I think that'll be a question in jeopardy in 5 years. What happened to the Palestinian people that used to live in Gaza Strip, It's a thing that no longer exists.
There's a lot of good.
How did the Palestinian people of Gaza Strip go extinct? It's because of this conversation right here.
Countries out there, people that rule those countries with big hearts, and this gentleman is at the top of the list.
He's got a huge heart, this
If
guy.
they don't want to leave, how are you going to force them, Mr. President?
Oh, they're going to be great. They're going to be very happy.
Can you
Your
give us a sense,
Majesty,
Mr. President,
should we
may I-
expect that the
may I-
Jordanian response would be part of a coordinated Arab response?
The response will be from a multitude of countries, Arab, international. I know the Europeans want to step in. And again, we'll probably have to look to the help of the United States to make sure that COGAT, which is the clearing agency on the Israeli side, makes this as efficient as possible, because 2,000 kids, the best way to get to them is by helicopters and get them straight to our institutions. And I also believe that quite a few countries would also probably like to take some of those kids and have them treated in their hospitals.
Exactly. Now you're backing off of the 2,000 cancer kids. So what about the other 1.7 million people there? You're not going with the full 2,000. Actually, when I think about it, a bunch of the other countries want to get a piece of these cancer kids, right?
So we hope to launch this ASAP.
Yes, and that's right. This should have been done by the Biden administration, but they didn't do anything. They didn't know.
You just found out about it. You could have done it. Like, you just found out about it. He's blaming Biden for the cancer kids. He just found out about it, like, literally 10 minutes ago, and he's blaming Biden for it already.
The hell they were doing. So this should have been done by the Biden administration. This should have never happened, because October 7th would have never happened if I were president. Zero chance of happening. You wouldn't have had that whole mess where the Middle East got blown up, and you wouldn't have had Ukraine and Russia fighting. That would have
We've heard that shit before.
never happened. And by the way, we're making good progress there, I think. I really think we're making some very good progress.
Mr. President, you've said before that the U.S. would buy Gaza, and today
Look at fucking little Marco Rubio.
you said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy.
We don't have to pay for it. What, you fucking shit me? We just get shit like walls and stuff. It just comes to you. You think we're going to pay for that shit? It's broken. Like, it's fucked up. Like, who wants to pay for something like that? It's damaged goods. I mean, maybe before the Israeli army bombed the shit out of it, but now, come on. Who wants to pay for that shit?
There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
We're going to cherish it. We're going to go to sleep with it. We're going to cuddle it like a teddy bear.
We're going to get it going eventually where a lot of jobs are going to be created for the people in the Middle East. It's going to be for the people in the Middle East, but I think it can be a diamond. It can be an absolute tremendous asset for the Middle East. And you're going to have peace. It's going to bring peace in the Middle East. Gaza, the way it is right now, every 10 years you're going to have the same thing happening. I've watched it so long.
I'm an expert at this. I saw pictures. You guys remember? I know more than the people that live there because I've seen the pictures. They haven't seen all the pictures.
The death and destruction of Gaza. The civilization's been wiped out in Gaza. No, it's going to
By IDF, by Israel Defense Force.
be a tremendous thing. It's fronting on the sea. It's going to be a great
Yeah, there you go. What about the gas, natural gas out there?
economic development job. It's going to put people to work, a lot of people to work, and those people are all going to be from the Middle East.
And just to follow up with one on that for King Abdullah, can you clarify again, sir, how do you feel about the U.S. taking Gaza, as the president said?
Well, again, this is something that we, as Arabs, will be coming to the United States with something that we're going to talk about later to discuss all these options.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
Oh, fuck. That's not, you can't just take fucking countries, bro. Like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like, under the U.S. authority, you just go take countries? Nobody wants to hear that shit. This is the kind of stuff where people are going to fucking come up and, like, say, we got, this is how arrogant America, you can't let Americans just think we can take countries. And, like a line has to be drawn. You can't say just listen to this fuck. This is bad. If you don't understand this, if you're not capable of understanding this, this is not how the world works or how America's supposed to work. It's supposed to be a democracy. And now you have all, again, this is the official story of the way these things work. And you can't just take countries, right? Like that's, you just can't say, we're just taking that. We own it now. We own that. We own Iceland. We own Greenland. We own frickin' Gaza Strip. We're going to own the West Bank. I don't know. We're doing it. We're America. I'm the American authority. I therefore declare that this land, all of it is potentially ours. We just got to claim it and it's ours.
Well, again, this is something that we, as Arabs, will be coming to the United States with something that we're going to talk about later to discuss all these options.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
Mr. President, would you seek to personally develop property in Gaza after this happens?
No. I've had a great career in real estate.
Mr. President,
when you've done what I've done in the last number of years, including the 4 years that we should have been doing something else, frankly, because people see that now for sure. But when you've done what I've done, you can just do more good for people when you're president. When you're president, we can do things. This is all things that should have been done, but actually things that shouldn't have had to be done. Gaza, absolutely, it would have been so great if the Biden administration would have started this. But actually, in all fairness to them, they should have never let it happen. It did happen, and because of the fact that they let this happen, this catastrophe of October 7th, something like this becomes practical and very real, meaning the development and...
You mean blowing the shit out of a country and getting rid of its people and then building some kind of, resort and where you can take all the natural gas and profit and carve it up amongst rich people where the 170 million Palestinians are all shit out of luck, except for those little children who have cancer who are actually going to go to a hospital. Other than that, everyone else is fucked.
All of the things that I've talked about with respect to the Gaza Strip. If you didn't have the October 7th catastrophe, and it was a horrible catastrophe, then probably you wouldn't be talking about that.
Exactly. So do you think maybe they did that on purpose because their goal was to get Gaza and the other parts and get rid of the Palestinian people, the Palestinian lands, the promised land and things that has been on Israel's agenda forever? If I know about it, you know about it, right? Like I'm just some guy, like, occasionally watches shit and reads shit about this on the internet. If I can figure out what their agenda is, it's not hard. Pretty much anybody else can, right? The information's readily available.
But the only thing I can say is this is going to bring stability and peace to the Middle East. And ultimately, when it's developed, which will be in quite a while from now, because we want to let things calm down. But when it's developed, it's going to bring tremendous numbers of jobs to the Middle East.
The job creation is off the fucking charts. And you know what? We're really taking care of the shit out of those cancer kids.
Including the people of your country.
Yeah, you guys are going to get some jobs. You guys are going to get peace.
Peace to the Middle East. There are many Palestinians, even though you say that everything is going to be beautiful, everything is going to be lovely, they're not going to want to go back. There are going to be people who want to go back and feel like that it is their right to do that. You haven't said, will there be any type of repercussions or anything that happens?
We don't think that's going to happen. We think we think people are going to be very happy, thrilled. A lot of those people that you're talking about are going to end up maybe living there and maybe working there, but it'll be in a different form. We have had tremendous support for this project, and
okay,
we
the Jews
think
aren't going. The Israelis are not going to let them back in. We know that. Like, that's clear.
biggest asset of the project. It's going to bring peace ultimately to the Middle East. All right.
Mr. President, one last question.
Go ahead behind you, and you've asked enough.
Mr. President, one of your promises on the campaign trail is to bring peace to the Middle East. It was a promise to your Arab voters here. The Arab voters in the United States oppose this. What do you say to them?
Well, you know, if you look at Michigan, where we have a large Arab population, as you know, I was just telling the king that we won. As you know, I won the Arab population. Now, when I started off, I wasn't leading, and when I finished, a few months later, we started campaigning.
Because they were so upset with what Biden did, they were saying, well, maybe Trump will do something different. And boy, were they fucking surprised.
Michigan. And when I finished, we won it by a tremendous amount, by 30 points. So my relationship with the Arab population has been fantastic, and my relationship with the Middle East is very good with all the countries, just about all the countries. Let's see, I would say all the countries.
Let's see all of them. I can't think of any of them.
And they all want to do something.
You know, Iran, how's Iran? Iran's part of the Middle East. How's your relationship with them?
And they want to see peace in the Middle East. All the stories you hear about the Middle East not really wanting peace, that they want war, they want this, they want to go a certain place. Let me tell you, those stories are false.
They want to live on their homelands. They don't want to be moved out. All those things. That's all bullshit.
Peace. I know them all very well. They want to have peace. They want to have a good life like other people. And this will be a big factor in bringing peace to the Middle East. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, guys.
Okay, somewhere he said, the guy, King of Jordan, let me see if I find that. I'll wrap this up. Okay, so this was recommended to me last night. I don't know why. I don't know if I missed this, or let's listen to it here. I didn't see it when it happened.
Mr. President, I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region. And it is, I think, our collective responsibility in the Middle East to continue to work with you, to support you, to achieve those lofty goals. So I'm very delighted to be here, and as you said, sir, it was some very interesting discussions.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Okay, so that's pretty fucked. Okay, so I received this tweet here from, not tweet, you can send messages out to YouTube. I think I did it once, but I don't remember how I did it, right? But I did it for some reason. You guys may or may not remember it. I think it was on one of my other channels. And I always thought it was just for subscribers. I know it's not just for subscribers because I've gotten these notes before. But I always kind of, in the back of my mind, thought it was just for subscribers. But now I think about it, it's happened before because I'm not subscribed to Don Lemons, which shows you how much they're pushing this guy. I haven't watched a Don Lemons video in about a week or so. I don't have any up on my toolbar. And, you know, I watch him periodically, but he sends out a message and YouTube makes sure everyone sees it. He's in the privileged class of YouTube, and he represents everything that YouTube shouldn't be about, which somebody who's become famous because of their position at CNN and doing a shitty job. I mean, pretty much universally it's understood that he sucks, and they're still pushing him. And he's pushing this mainstream narrative even though it's left him behind. And so this was a message that was sent out. I got a thing to do on this Caroline, fake Christian Barbie girl and some comments I got about Trump and her, or me, things I said. They're about me, but really my opinions of those, Trump and her. And they're kind of funny. It's going to be a good thing. But I want to read this first before I forget, because I took a screenshot of it, and so I don't have it where I'll just see it. The screenshots are just there amongst many other different things, and I won't see it, so I want to do it while it's here, even though it doesn't really pertain to what I'm, it's interrupting a little bit of the flow here, but it's pretty funny. So it's Don Lemon's here. Hey, Lemon Nation. Now, I could just stop there and cover that for 20 minutes. He thinks there's a Lemon Nation, that there's a Don Lemon Nation. First, lemons imply, a lemon car, or, if you get lemons, you make lemonade. Like lemons imply something sour and not good, or a dud car or something. And so, hey, Lemon Nation, it's not something that's got a positive association. We just hit 500,000 subscribers, and we couldn't have done it without you. Of course, of course not. They're subscribers. Your support, your engagement, and your commitment to staying informed keep this community going. Whether you're here for the news, the community, or just to scream into the void with us, we see you. We appreciate you, and we're so grateful to have you here. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Onward to 1 million. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay allowed, stay engaged, and let's keep pushing forward together. So Don Lemon's is particularly bad. There's people who do a show, and I might not agree with their opinion. I might not like what they do, but I can see that there's why people watch them. I can see the demographics that's there watches them, right? And I can't think of people offhand. I guess Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, for example. I don't agree with a lot of stuff they say or their way they present it. Even someone like Chris Cuomo's, I can understand why he has an audience. And some of these other people, right? Because they're good at it. And then there's some people who just aren't good at it. And there's people like Jen Psaki, who's terrible at it. She's stiff and weird, these things. She's not polished, not professional. But she's not as stupid as Don Lemon. Don Lemon is completely clueless. And he's really, the kind of person you don't want on your team, right? Like you hope he stays liberal and democratic, because you wouldn't want him on your team because he's like just a fool and he misrepresents things, right? He's like an Alex Jones. Alex Jones is over the top and a performance artist and a shill, but in terms of things like that, where it backfires and it causes damage to your community. But he thinks there's a Lemon Nation. So that's Don Lemon's. What is a Lemon Nation? What are those people, right? The people that watch Don Lemon's, pretty much nobody wants as their audience members because they think Don Lemon's is good. What kind of person has the inability to understand that Don Lemon's is like really bad at his job in every way, shape, or form? But anyways, okay, so YouTube recommended this to me. Let's just start here.
This woman just educated an entitled reporter on DEI.
When you are flying...
So this person put the music in, which sucks. If she educated them, then isn't it good without the music? Like, people have to have this fucking music that you put in, which, but she's saying this is brilliant. She's schooling this reporter.
Flying on an airplane with your loved ones, which every one of us in this room has, do you pray that your plane lands safely and gets you to your destination, or do you pray that the pilot has a certain skin color?
Okay, so that's a horrible analogy, right? That's a bad analogy for a variety of reasons, but I'm not going to get into here because we'll cover it later maybe. But I want to talk about prayer, because the right way to pray is ask God to have you accept God's will. Because maybe it's God's will that plane goes down, right? And you're praying against God's will. The plane's about to crash. Everyone on a plane that's about to crash is praying to God that plane doesn't crash, right? People who are atheists are praying when that plane's descending. You pray, oh my God, this is going to happen. Please, God, don't let this happen. You're begging God for more life, but that may or may not be that may or may not be with God's will. Whatever God's will is, whatever's supposed to happen, whatever your soul's choice is. And most times people are praying it's when something's going to happen that they realize is going to happen. And they're begging God for it not to happen. And so, the whole idea that there's part of a plan. And there's a lot of these people who claim to be godly people, religious people, and they're constantly working against God's will and God's plan. And, willfully so. And she's one of them. That's why I talk about her being the fake Christian Barbie.
We all know the answer to that question, and as President Trump said yesterday, it's common sense. People should not be hired based on their disabilities, based on their skin color, their gender, their race. None of that matters. What matters to this president and this administration is how well you can do your job.
Okay, well, he can't do his job very well. You, I guess, are doing an okay job lying for him, but President Trump is a failure, and so are a lot of the people he's hiring. And Trump's criteria isn't how well they can do their job. Trump's criteria, no one can deny this. Nobody with any sort of grasp on reality can deny this fact. What's Trump's primary criteria? That they like Trump, right? That they're Trumpers. So this is not, she's not being accurate here at all. She's being disingenuous because Trump's criteria isn't how well someone can do their job. Because there's lots of people who are probably doing a pretty good job, are federal workers, and they're going to be fired because they're not Trumpers. And so that's complete bullshit, right? And so this person saying she just schooled them. And the other issue is this. See, there's two things going on here. With the with the left wing. For example, yesterday I saw them, and I might have mentioned this, and they were like, oh my God, there's all these people that are out there making sure that you hear about the bird flu, and these people are working for the government, and now they don't have their platform on the government to tell everyone about the bird flu, and Trump isn't going to tell everyone about the bird flu. And when you hear shit like that, you're like, oh, good, I'm glad they're firing those people. These bullshit jobs, right? That, CNN's trying to make a big deal of when people have lost faith in the whole, medical bullshit thing they did with COVID, right? And so for when you hear that, you're like, oh, I'm glad they're getting rid of these hires and these, they're cutting these costs. I'm not going to do the Elon Musk thing today, obviously. This video is going too long. I'll do that tomorrow. The meeting with T-Head with Trump in the Oval Office, which was weird and funny. And that's going to be a lot of good laughs. But anyways, I've said this over and over again. Just because the liberals suck doesn't mean the Republicans and conservatives don't suck. They just suck in different ways in the opposite direction. And so the liberals and the woke people and these various demographics on the left are saying racism and sexism and homophobia is way worse than it is. They're exaggerating it, and they're putting government in a position to do something about it when government should not be in a position to do something about it. But what the right wing is doing here, and what this fake Christian Barbie's doing, is pretending that white people who run most of these positions, many of them run by white men, aren't going to hire white people or white men or demographics that are more comfortable to them. And that there isn't any racism, and there isn't any privilege, and there isn't any prejudice. And I've been around white people my whole life, and I can say there is prejudice to all these different groups, right? And you guys know it, and I know it. I mean, within these other groups and other racial groups, I mean, you hear this with, people in the gay community think they're better, and people in the black community think they're better, and people in the Asian community or the Hispanic community, and people in the Hispanic community think they're better than other Hispanics. People in the Asian community thinks that their Asian group, they're Japanese, they're better than Koreans, right? They all have their reasons to think, not all of them, not all people, but this is something that's kind of universal. Most people think the group they're in, and it's also for age. Like, people think that their generation's better than other generations. And so this is something that exists in human history and the human socialization, human culture, that people think their group is better, and they're going to be prejudiced on the side of their group. And sometimes that gets reversed a little bit. People try to break free from that, and they rebel against it, whatever. But for the most part, that exists. And to pretend that doesn't exist is just complete bullshit, right? And so DEI hire could be a bad thing and is a bad thing, but there is a legitimate reason for it. And to pretend that it doesn't exist and that Trump and Trump's people are all about hiring just the best people to Trump are people that like him and kiss his ass and tell him how great he is. Those aren't the best people. The people that worship Trump are certainly not the best people. In fact, I would not hire those people. I would not hire a Trumper, right? Because, they show poor judgment. So speaking with Trumpers with poor judgment, this is, I think, my first comment I want to get to. And the one about Caroline, I can't think of her last name, but, the Barbie truther. And so this person writes this. I used to watch this channel religiously and enjoyed much of Paul's jokes. Paul, you bitch and moan for change. Well, here it is. I've been listening to recent videos. You have nothing positive to say about Trump. Okay, so first of all, I never talked about change in this way, right? So this person didn't obviously watch my videos or understand them, and there'll be more to this as we go through it. But what's being said here is this, because they're saying I used to bitch and moan or complain or whatever the words were. Complain and moan. Now, when this person was watching my videos and laughing at my jokes, it's because I was making fun of Joe Biden. And even though I talk about Joe Biden and all the stuff that he's doing, I'm not complaining about it, which I'll get into in a bit. And I think most people can understand that. And when the person stopped watching my videos, when I started talking about Trump in the same way. So you have people who like my jokes and like my analysis and like what I have to say when it's something that they agree with. But then when it's something they don't agree with and it's just changing the person, because my analysis of Donald Trump is just as good as my analysis of Joe Biden. It's just that you're attached to Trump. Like, I don't give a shit about either one of them. I should make this clear. This is kind of an interesting point that I thought I would raise. It might sound like I'm being arrogant, but I'm not. It's just, the truth of what goes on inside of me. I've always had a little bit of this condition that I just don't care about stuff. Renouncing things has been very easy for me. So when I was a kid, my parents used to give me 25 cents, and I go to the drugstore, Perry's drugstore, and I needed a penny. So sometimes I had to find a penny around the house because there's a penny tax. And I could buy 25 cents worth of candy, and that was enough to get me sick. And if my friends didn't have any money, I'd share the candy with them. And after a while, I just started buying comic books. My parents would give me a quarter. And I'd go down the store, and I crossed over this road called the Boulevard and walked by this bar with its windows all masked up called the Cypress Arms. And I walked into this, Perry's drugstore, and Perry, the drugstore, the pharmacist, would walk up behind us and stare at us to make sure we weren't stealing shit, because, he was like that. And, when I got sick, I would just stop eating candy. My mom said that I needed to go off of dairy, which I used to drink quite a bit of dairy and eat cheese and things like that. And I did it for like 3 months, and she forgot to tell me that I could go back on. It was for some allergy test or something. But I was always able just to give things up without much problems. And as an adult, I drank, I did drugs and things like that. It was never really a problem. As soon as I had to, I gave it up. I quit eating unhealthy foods, fast foods, and started eating a macrobiotic diet, which was kind of, arduous. And you've been able to do things like that over the years. Became a vegetarian, just, when I had to do something, I just did it, right? Could adjust to those things, right? Just give things up. I used to, I've always been a fan of TV, and I've given up TV for chunks of my life. And I can give all these things up if I have to, because I just can. Like, I can renounce things easily. I'm not all that sentimental, and I can adjust my lifestyle. And I just don't really care about these things. And since I've done the Sajmark system, it's a lot about being detached. It's that you're supposed to have a family life. You're supposed to have a job. You're supposed to have a real life. You're not supposed to run off into the woods and hide away from your life like, a monk, or, go to some monastery or go to some ashram and be away from everybody. You're supposed to go out and live your life. But in living your life, you're supposed to remember God and be detached from it to some extent. And as you get older, it's more and more so the case. And, when I really attune to my spiritual condition, There's spiritual condition, which is the purity of your spiritual condition, how gross you are or how pure you are. And there is something called spiritual approach, your proximity to God, and it changes your consciousness. And when I really meditate on my own spiritual condition, when I really get into a good deep meditation, like happened in this recent gathering, I don't really feel like doing anything, right? And I couldn't, from that condition, do these videos. Like, I don't care about any of this stuff. I certainly couldn't mock people from that condition. Like, I couldn't make fun of them. Like, I couldn't do any of these types of things. It would just, like, I don't care about it. I don't care about any of it. And so I have to descend down from that condition into this, political cesspit. And it used to bother me, and I used to feel kind of aloof and above it. But now it's my job. But I have to come down from, the etheric world or whatever it is. I get to have these moments of deep meditation where I connect with the, where I am spiritually. It's quite a difference descending into this very gross, ugly world of politics and celebrity culture and the comments that people leave and all this, low level, low vibrational shit. But I do it. And so the reason I'm saying this is I don't care about any of this stuff. Like, truly I don't care about Trump or Biden or any of these things. And so who's a better barometer of truth? The person who loves Trump and is putting all their hopes in Trump, or loves Biden and putting all their hopes in Biden, or a person who doesn't give a fuck about either one of them? Like, who's more likely to see the truth of the person? So this person was laughing with me and, agreeing with everything I said. This is what I get from their comment. Agreeing with everything I said. We're going to read it again. I used to watch this channel religiously, enjoyed much of Paul's jokes. Paul, you bitch and moan for change. Well, here it is. And so I've been listening to your recent videos. You have nothing positive to say about Trump. And so all of a sudden, things that used to think funny and things that were true are now bitching and moaning, right? Because it's about Trump. And, instead of me talking truth about Trump, I was talking truth about Biden, but not Trump because you love Trump, right? And so who's more realistic here? Because I don't care about either one of them, right? And it says this: you have nothing to say positive about Trump. Constant bitching. You have everything to say but solutions. Okay, so if this guy used to watch me religiously, as he says, then he should know my solution. Because my solution isn't a political one. And that's the point. Like, I have no, there's nothing in me that would think that politics will change anything. And that's been borne out. I mean, there's things that politics can make better or worse for you personally. But in terms of the overall condition and trajectory of humanity, politics isn't going to do shit. And everyone should realize that, right? But my solution is something different. You guys know what my solution is, right? Only spirituality will save this world. That's not something that I said. That's not something I made up. It comes from the second master of Sagemark system, which I wholeheartedly agree with. And so in 1993, I started to read the books and the philosophy of the Sagemark system. And there's a book called Reality at Dawn. And in that book, there is a chapter called My Vision. And in this vision, there is lines like, the world of the future will be built on the bones and ashes of this current world. And the only countries that will survive, the only people and countries that will survive will have to, or will be able to survive in this new paradigm, will have worlds with spirituality as its base. It built on a foundation of spirituality, which is connecting to the divinity within you. And because of my experiences with that now for 30 years, I know that's the solution. Because it's made me a better person, and it could make everyone else a better person, but people don't want to try that for a variety of reasons. But at some point, it's going to become mandatory for people to even survive. Right now, you don't have to do spirituality. There's too many distractions. In fact, everything in our society is pulling you away from the divinity within you. But you guys all know what my position is. I think you should. I mean, is this person like stupid or just wishful thinking, or they don't really listen to me, or they're lying, or they're just misrepresenting what I'm saying? But it's a very simple solution. People connect with the divinity within them. They become better people. and then they build better societies. That the people have to change. It's not the system that has to change. It's not the politicians that have to change. It's not the government that has to change. All these things do have to change, but that's not the solution. The solution is better people create better governments. Better people raise the vibration of everything. So if you have a society of saints, the world the way it is now would look nothing like this. But the system has to come down first before there's going to be wide-scale adaptation of spirituality. And so most people just aren't ready for it yet. But I have experienced it personally, and I can say that, that's the answer. And whether you believe it or not, that's not my problem. But for me personally, I can see it, I know it, I've experienced it, I've lived it. And when I make fun and mock of politicians and celebrity culture and the system, it's not me calling for change of the system. It's not me complaining about it. It's me documenting that this isn't working, that politics isn't changing shit, and celebrity culture isn't the goal, and people who are celebrities aren't happy, and they're actually worse than they were before. It's actually made them worse, and all of the things that I say. It's showing that the American dream and all the things that we've been told as the pursuit of happiness, fame and wealth and, pleasure and all these things and sensory stimulation and all the happiness that's supposed to be available to people that never is, and this imaginary utopia that could never be, is not why we're here. We have a spiritual purpose, we have a soul's purpose, and most people's egos will not let that in because they don't want to give up control to the soul. The ego does not want to submit and to be submissive and to the soul. And so the ego has hijacked the soul's purpose, and there's damage being done because of it. I say this over and over again. Everyone should know this who watches my stuff here. You can believe it or not, but that's what I fully believe. You have everything to say but no solutions. Trump is actually trying to fix the world instead of just bitch about it like you do. So, displacing 1,700,000 people is not fixing the world. Trump is not fixing the world. I mean, it's silly to think that that's what's going on here. You think he really wants to fix the world? First of all, he doesn't. He's selfish, only in terms of his legacy as a president, and, he wants success, but that's not his goal. That's not what he's all about. Anybody who knows Trump knows that's the case. And then the other part, I've been on your channel for about a decade. What do you want the man to do? Wave his hand and fix it right off? Nobody said anything about that. How can you be watching are you slow? What? You've been watching my channel for a decade and you think that I expect Trump to fix the world? I've said over and over, the world can't be fixed by politics. I don't expect Trump to fix it, and he's not trying to fix it because he wouldn't do it the way he's doing it. He's doing it a deceptive way. He's remaking the world in his image because he thinks he's God. The world according to Trump. He's turning Trump into Trump land, the way that the world that Trump thinks should be that way. Like him saying the Palestinian people don't want to live in Palestine, so I'm going to move them out, and it's what's best for them, and I know better for what's best of them. A lot of those people are more evolved than Trump. Trump is like an infant on the evolutionary scale. He just happens to be president. He's good at, spinning things and convincing the people that he is something that he's not. I mean, he's great at that. He's wonderful at that. And everything else he sucks at. And so in terms of governing, in terms of administration, in terms of research, in terms of, just making the right decision, the guy has all these bets. Now, here's an example. I was watching the show The Apprentice, I don't know, second season some years ago, third season, I don't know. I watched a lot of the shows. I like Trump. I thought he was funny as a character. And they had a challenge, and Trump had this thing called Trump Water. And he said the water business is a $2.7 trillion business, and I want a piece of it. And he had these very gaudy Trump bottles with his fucking big-ass face and all that shit, and it said Trump Water on it, right? And they were supposed to come up with ways to promote this water. And Trump had a free commercial. He was, part of the show's, what Trump got was he brought these vendors in, and these people would pay him bank. He would get all the money from these tasks and these people would get free advertisement on the show. It was like a 20-minute infomercial on a very popular show. And so Trump made bank on the show. Like, he didn't get paid for the show, but he got paid by these people who were getting product placement on the show. And he had this product placement for Trump water. Have you seen Trump water in any of the, the grocery cases lately or ever? What about Trump steaks? What about Trump University? I could list the amount of failures and bankruptcies and things the guy's failed at. He's a fucking failure at business. And so how is he going to be a good president? Like, he failed at business, and that was what he was running on, that he was a great businessman who could fix the country. He can't fix shit. Trump is good at making himself look good and lying in his pockets and being corrupt and skimming off the top and basically money laundering and making deals, selling his access to the White House. Jared and Ivanka walked away with $2 billion from the Saudi Arabians. He's got deals with all these people. His family does. That's what he's good at. He's fucking pretending to be in it for you and getting your vote and support, and he's making bank. It's obvious that's what he's doing. Like, that's what the kind of person he's always fucking been. You've just deluded yourself and bought into his bullshit. And so let's wrap this comment up here. This is great. I've watched your trip for a decade. What do you want the man to do? Wave his wand and fix it right off the bat? You know it don't work that way. Shit takes time. So wise ass, what are your solutions as you sit on your chair and watch all the rest of us? Paul, you provide no service to the country beyond your pontificating. You're an apostate. I had to look up that word. Fuck you for making me look up the word apostate. Apostate. A person who renounces a religious or political belief or principle. After 50 years as an apostate, he returned to his faith. Again, none of those things are true. Like a mischaracterization, because I do have a solution. It's not my solution. Only spirituality will save this world. That the world will change when people become better. We have a people problem, and facts bear this out. The problem is, just like with prevention, people don't want any part of that. And so people, wander around following fucking Judas goats and the Pied Pipers like Trump over the cliff at people like you, and that's just what's going to happen. You could connect to the divinity within you and understand what I'm saying, but you won't, and that's not my problem either. But the solution's there, and it's not mine. It's always been there. People have never embraced it. People are always looking for some material solution to a spiritual problem. Kaboom, that's quotable. People are looking for a material problem, a material solution to a spiritual problem, which would be a great T-shirt, by the way, that I have to, I'll never put out. All right, so let's go to the other thing here. Okay, so along those same lines, let me find these other comments here. And so the first one, the person says here, let me make these bigger. I got to turn the light on too. You are so hateful. Why are you so hateful? You're doing nothing positive to bring people together. That's not godly. So Trump's fake Christian, Barbie's weird marriage. So first of all, you think fake Christian Barbie and Trump are bringing people together? Fuck you, right? They're bringing people together who are like them. Everyone else they're pissing off, right? So don't pretend that they're like uniters, right? So that's the last question, the comment, but this person left several others. It might have been two different people. Let me see. Let me turn the light on here. It's storm is rolling in, and I hit the wrong button. Let me pull up here we go. So here's the next comment. Actually, this is somebody different, but they said the same thing. You are hateful. This is all to the Trump's fake Christian, Barbie's weird marriage. You are so hateful. Talking about a baby, really? You're disgusting. I think I called the baby ugly. I didn't say ugly, but I implied. So, that's legitimate criticism. But then the person writes this same thing. This is the same person, I think. Maybe not. Is it the same person? Let me go back here. Yeah, it's the same person. So, but again, they're mad at me, so this is why they're making things up. And so this was an earlier comment by the same person. You are hateful, talking about baby really disgusting. That's the same comment. So then here's an earlier comment here. And the person says, he is a very good-looking man. Are you jealous? And so this is a mischaracterization of what I said. So I'm going to reread that comment, and I have a second thing to say about it. But first, let me say this. The fake Christian Barbie married a guy she was 27, 26, 27, married the guy, and had a kid with him, met him all within a year. And when he proposed or they were getting married, this was her quote, pretty much close to her quote, not verbatim, but, accurate enough. He was the man of my dreams. And what I said was, he's not the man of any 28-year-old girl's dreams, right? He shouldn't be the man of any 28-year-old girl's dreams. You can look at the guy, right? And he's a 60-year-old man. Let me read the comment again because it's like epic. So here it is. Pull it up. He's a very good-looking man. Are you jealous? Why did I need to read that? I couldn't remember that. It's not a page turner. Now, the jealous argument is always the most lame argument, right? It's for remedial minds that can't think of anything else because they're remedial minds. They're upset. They're really angry and they're upset at something I've said or somebody else has said. And, whatever they're irritated about. And they said, what, are you jealous? Because they have nothing else. Because they can't figure out what you're about. They don't understand your point of view. They don't know who you are, what you are. And so they're like, you must be jealous if you say something bad about somebody else or what they perceive as bad. So they think they must be jealous. And so this person's saying that I'm saying this guy is ugly and that I must be jealous of him, which, when we're talking about two 60-year-old men, men in general, I've never been jealous about another man's looks. I could say that 100%. Like I never looked at a guy and said, boy, I'm jealous of how good looking he is. That's no thought that's ever crossed my mind. But even if I was somebody who did that, which I don't, right? There's two things about this. This guy looks, not like me, but he's my type of person. We're both ethnic. I'm Italian. I think the guy's Greek or Italian. I'm Italian, Irish, and Albanian, and German. And we don't have similar features, but we're like the kind of people you would put in the same category. So there'd be no sense of jealousy because it'd be somebody like that people might consider like me, right? And so if you understand age, as people get older, when they look at other people, women, of course, are always going to be different, but certainly with men, if there was going to be some judgment where you were going to compare yourself to somebody else, it wouldn't be, oh my God, that dude's better looking than me. It would be, oh my God, that guy looks younger than me, right? Like it gets to the point where when you look at other people, when I went back and look up some of the people I went to high school with on the internet, like I hadn't done that ever. Like it was my first time doing that. A few of my friends, like people like that, I went to try to contact, and I couldn't find them years ago because I didn't have the skill level I have now at doing such things. But when I saw these people, I was looking at them and comparing them, both the men and women, who looks older, right? And it wasn't like a competition because if somebody was in much better shape than me and looked younger, it'd be like, oh wow, there's still hope for us, right? Because it's a generation of people, and we all know that we're towards the end. We're in the back half. I got about 20 more years left, 20 more good years, whatever, 30 years if it's again to the 90s like my parents. But those are not the primeval years, and hopefully it'll be more spiritual than anything else, right? More into my spiritual practice and my spiritual life, and working towards and cultivating the relationship to make it easy transition as I pass away, right? And so this competition, it's silly. It's silly to say, just in terms of me personally, because none of that had anything to do with what I said about the guy, which was this guy is no 28-year-old's dream. Perfect guy. this, man of my dreams, right? Because if a 28-year-old girl came up to me in the grocery store and said, "You're the man of my dreams," I would think that there's something wrong with her. She's trolling me, or it's some kind of frickin' setup, like, because something has to be wrong there for some 28-year-old girl to say that to a 60-year-old man. There was something seriously wrong. If that person actually looks at a 60-year-old man and says, especially that guy, because the guy looks like a thug. I mean, he doesn't look like the hero. When you look at the guy, you don't go, "Oh, this guy's the hero in the story." He looks like a thug, right? And so if you're saying this is the man of your dreams, then you're fucked up. You're fucked in the head, right? Like something's wrong with you as a 28-year-old girl that you would aspire to marry a 60-year-old fucking man. That was the whole point of that. It's weird. And the other point was all you Trumpers made fun of Kamala Harris, and you liked when I called her Kamala Kneepads Harris when I was talking about her, because she serviced a 60-year-old guy when she was 29, and he gave her a career. And so what is fake Christian Barbie doing? What is she getting out of this marriage? Like, what's the real reason for marrying a 60-year-old guy? Because if that's what she's into, it's weird. Like, it's fucked up. Like, it's, and I don't even know how she could go through with that shit, right? Like, and I don't know how he could either, because as a 60-year-old person, you can't even talk to 28-year-old people, right? Like, you can't even relate to them. My children, like, that's their age group. Like, I can't even, we're totally different in terms of our generations and, all those things. It's not, it's hard to interact with people who are younger because, they just don't get you, right? Like, they have no reference point. It's like you speak different languages. And so that's why people marry people in their same generation. I said that over and over in the video. It was weird. It's weird because she's in this powerful position and she's married this old guy, and there's probably something going on that they're not telling us. And the fact that the guy has no social media presence. And when I asked the AI bot to find out if the guy was ever married before, there was no information. That should be a red flag for anybody. That we don't even know that this person, she's in a very powerful position as press secretary. She's one of the top, 10 positions in the administration, one of the most important ones. And she's dealing with the media and the press. And she has this kind of bizarre marriage with a very old guy. And the guy, you don't even know if he has other kids or other marriages or anything about the guy, other than he's some sort of successful real estate developer who probably is going to head to the Gaza Strip and start building some kind of luxury resort there with Trump's blessing and participation. But here's the real point to all this stuff. So the people called me hateful, which, I've explained this before, and I'm not going to get into that now. Like, I don't feel hate in my system. I don't have any hate for them. Mean, I can be mean, any of these things, right? But any kind of criticism you would say about me, this other guy said that I'm doing nothing and I'm not participating. I'm just a bystander, apostate, or whatever the fuck he said, right? And this other person saying that I'm hateful. But the reality is your guy is about to evict 1.7 million people. And God knows what other damage he's going to do across the world. And one of the things that I praised about Trump was he didn't continue some of these bullshit wars, and he didn't create new bullshit wars in his first term. But now he's going full Trump, and he's going to displace people, and he's going to destroy habitat, he's going to destroy the environment, he's going to fuck the world in various places, in various ways, and possibly start World War III and the rest of it. At least he's going to be setting up the conditions for World War III if he doesn't start himself. He's going full Trump, and he's a piece of shit loser and a fucking flim-flam artist and a grifter, and he's not somebody who's really makes the world a better place and never has, right? But to me, that's part of the divine plan. So don't even have a problem with that, because it's just what's supposed to happen. I would love it if he made the world better. I'm not rooting against him. It would be better for me personally and my ego and my comforts. But, I don't believe that's happening. It's not part of the divine plan according to the spiritual practice that I do. And I don't even have a problem with these press secretaries lying and covering up for the president and, doing the things that they do, because that's their job. So I don't mind any of that bullshit. I know they're going to lie to us. And I don't mind the government lying in the sense that I know that people can't handle the truth. The masses can't handle the truth. I don't mind the CIA doing the dirty shit that they're doing to keep the country going, because that's all everybody's job. It's all that they're all doing what they're supposed to do in terms of their, material life, and maybe even spiritually they found their role or their path, and they're doing work to create, a future where this system collapses and a new system takes its place, which is part of a plan. As uncomfortable that is for all of us, I understand, I've accepted that, at least on some level, and I'm grateful for it as it unfolds. The problem that I have with her, the things that I point out, I should say, I watch bullshit all day long. I watch, people lying. I watch people doing their jobs poorly. I watch, bad thinking and, irrational analysis and bad content all fucking day long, right? I find things that I could comment on, make fun of, mock perpetually. And I don't, put all those things into these videos, right? And so I choose certain subject matters and certain things or whatever. And the things that stick out to me, like things that, I wouldn't say I get emotionally invested in, but something that maybe bothers me a little bit, is when somebody pretends to be a kind-hearted Christian woman. Like this blonde woman comes off as a nice, sweet, blonde-haired, young Christian woman, Catholic woman, who's a Republican and a conservative, but she's heartless. She's got a hard heart. Because, even as a young person, there were things where I'm like, this is a moral dilemma. Like, this is something that, I don't feel comfortable doing, right? My friends started to shoplift, things like that, wanted to encourage me to do things like that. My friends wanted to encourage me to do drugs, take drugs and things, which, I ended up doing or whatever. But, things that I, I didn't want to be, do the wrong thing. And even though, I'm kind of an asshole and, I say mean things and there's things I do and, I feel bad about it. I have a heart. I feel bad if I hurt somebody's feelings, or somebody watched one of my videos and their feelings were hurt. I would feel bad about it, right? Some part of me would feel, well, that wasn't the intention, right? One of these celebrities or some of these other people. And so there's things I just could never do. And I could never get up like this press secretary and pretend what Trump said about the Palestinian people was okay. I couldn't do that. And, I can't respect anybody who could. And she's done that a number of times and used guilt and shame when she said it's evil to suggest the Palestinian people should live in Gaza when it's such a pit. And for her to say it's evil to suggest the thing that the Palestinian people want is their home back, and the Israelis have destroyed it based on American support and American, American relationship, American alliance, is fucked up, right? We're all a part of that. And the pain and suffering Trump's going to inflict on these people, and for her to sit up there like some, fake Christian Barbie and pretend that she's kind and that they care about people and they care about America and all this shit, it's just wrong. And that's why she's getting some of the analysis here. If she didn't do those things, and she's done a number of them, and she's kind of bitchy and snotty about it, kind of arrogant and just whatever. And so, again, that's part of the job, and we've seen it. It's a hard job to be likable in. It's a hard job to be, be somebody who's authentic and not a lying piece of shit. But that's the job she's taken. She has a weird marriage. This idea that in the Sajmark system, that people with a soft heart often have hard exteriors. People think they're assholes or they're, mean or whatever because they feel things. And they have, they feel guilt and shame. They feel compassion. They feel empathy. And that people who pretend to be really nice and sweet, often people who go to church and pretend that they're religious, they have hard hearts. Externally, they're very soft, but they're covering up a hard heart where they don't really feel things. And she's somebody I would put in that category. But anyways, let me wrap this one up. My voice is starting to go. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing for the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.